June 13th, because I wasn't there.
All right, good evening. The time being 7 o'clock on June 24th, 2019. All members of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. As a housekeeping item, just in case anybody's here for any of these, agenda item E, 91 Northgate Road has requested to be continued. 2131 Main Street has asked to be continued to our next meeting, and 1037 North Street has asked to be continued to our next meeting. So any of those three, if you're here for those, they will not be heard tonight. They'll just be continued to our July 8th meeting. With that, I would go to agenda item A, which is approval of minutes for June 3rd and June 13th. We'll take these separately because Mr. Battaglia needs to abstain from one of them, so we'll just do
Yeah,
this
Mr.
separately.
Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes of June 3rd, 2019 as written.
All right, I have a motion made. Do I have a second? Second. Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. And then for the June 13 one, that's the one.
Yeah, I make a motion that you accept them, and I'll abstain from voting as I was not there.
Does somebody else need to make the motion? All right, so I'll make a motion to accept the June 13, 2019 minutes. Do I have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That takes care of the minutes. Moving on to agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Any committee reports that any of the members wish to make at this time? Mr. Fowler.
Yes, on the zoning bylaw subcommittee, we had hoped as a board, committee I should say, that we would be coming before town meeting in October. We're more of a realist now that the point that this will have to be the annual town meeting of 2020 to take the correlation of all the items, and that's when we will do it, not October, but in May.
So just as a question, does that change those meetings that they were originally going to have in the summer? I know they've had
Yes,
one.
it's
Are the rest
changed one.
canceled? Will the rest now be canceled?
Yes.
Okay.
There's only really one.
That was the one they just had, right? Yeah.
No, one in the future, Thursday, I think.
I thought it was this past Thursday, no?
No, that was
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
Thursday.
okay, all right.
And we had another one at the senior center,
Okay,
and so,
all right.
we did that one without you.
I purposely did not come to that one in the hopes that it would allow others to speak. Any other committee reports or any, Mr.
Yeah, the
Dubreuil?
CPC had a meeting last week, and the only thing they did was approve the $40,000 for the programming for the Heritage Commission that, I guess, they made the program so everybody in the town can use it now, instead of just the Heritage Commission.
All right, very good.
It is good.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Good, all right. Moving on to agenda item B2, sidewalk presentation / update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Hardeman. I'm the town engineer. I want to thank you for having me come in tonight, give an update on where we stand with the pedestrian mobility master plan, AKA sidewalks in the town, and what we have done, what we're doing, and what we plan to do. So as you know, back in 2017, we created the pedestrian mobility master plan. One of the things that came out of the visioning session was that the residents were looking at sidewalks as the second most important item in town. First, obviously, being the schools. So we took a comprehensive look at the town to see what we could do to expand the sidewalk network, to get people out walking, to get them to where they wanted to go, by alternate means of transportation. So in front of you is the basically three plans we came up with: the existing sidewalk network, the proposed sidewalk network, and then the overall build-out in town. We had a focus meeting back in 2017, met with a bunch of residents, really talked about our goals, and then got their input on how to meet those goals. One of the big things that came out of that was the location where people were looking to have sidewalks. It was main roads, it wasn't side streets, it wasn't cul-de-sacs. You know, they're looking for sidewalks on the main road so that they can get between different points of interest in town. So we took that to heart, created the master plan, and we've started to chip away at that. We just built 2,000 feet of sidewalk on Pleasant Street, which means you can get all the way from Whipple Road to the center of town on a sidewalk. We plan to expand that network as well. Currently, we've got Foster Road under design, so you'll be able to get from the Heathbrook School to the center of town on a sidewalk. South Salem and Main Street, we've got a TIP project with Mass DOT that's going out to bid next month. That's about an additional 3,000 feet of sidewalk in that area for those 3 intersections, including signalization, bike lanes, and things like that. Easton Chandler is getting underway. They just put out some erosion controls this week. They're going to start into it next week, and more likely after the 4th of July, they're going to be into full construction out there. You know, that's an additional 2,000 feet of sidewalk we're going to be building this summer. Andover and River is another TIP project where we've got about 2,100 linear feet of sidewalk added to the network in that location. So, you know, all in all, those projects account for almost 2 additional miles of sidewalk in town. Now, the town has 165 miles of road, excuse me, and the amount of sidewalk we have, it's no surprise, it's a lot less than what we need. You know, it's not 165 miles of sidewalk, but every mile that we can add to that increases the network and gets people out and gets them where they need to be safely on sidewalks. Some future projects we have in the works. Shawsheen Street, we just got funding at annual town meeting in May to do the design and the first phase of construction to go from Main Street to Vale Street. It's over 2 miles of sidewalk that we plan to construct there. Additionally, there's the Dascom Road project that's being proposed in Andover, and the representatives in Tewksbury have gone to the meetings with the planning board and are really pushing to see what can be done in Tewksbury to improve our roads as a result of, you know, the increased traffic from that project. So the thought there is to get sidewalks down East Street to Leston so that there's pedestrian access from those neighborhoods all the way to this potential new project, as well as on Shawsheen Street down to Vale to get those residential areas you know, up to this project. So, you know, those are things that we've got in the works and things that we're pushing for. As far as funding goes, we just received $250,000 at annual town meeting. We've received that amount for a few years now. It gets us a significant amount of sidewalk when you look at it, but because there's such a need for sidewalk, it's, you know, funding is, there's never enough funding. The information I have in front of you now, at that level of funding with the network that we want to add to that's on that list, it's about a 25-year plan to get that done. You know, that's a long time, but we'll continue to, you know, to make strides to add to that sidewalk network, you know, and work with the board. You know, if there's places that the board feels there's a need, if the board sees that there's you know, developments coming in that, you know, would benefit from sidewalks or you know, has ideas, we are open. We want to hear from the board. You know, we want the board's input on this. You know, you guys are the planning board. You guys are the, you know, the entity in town that can provide us with some input and some feedback. You know, there's also so our funding is both used for design and construction. Some of the challenges that we have to deal with, not only the right-of-way, determining where the right-of-way is, you know, what side of the road can we build the sidewalks on, how much space do we have within the land that the town controls, but also you've got obstructions, you've got mailboxes, you have telephone poles, you have fences and stone walls, things like that. You know, we do the best we can to make sure that people don't construct within the right-of-way, but, you know, Tewksbury's been around for a long time, and, you know, people have been able to do things, you know, and build up to the edge of the road under the perception that they own to the edge of the road, which, you know, as the board is well aware is not the case. Other things that we have to contend with are drainage. You know, believe me, I would love to have concrete sidewalks and vertical granite curbs everywhere we install sidewalks. You know, that's the Cadillac, that's the benchmark. But But when you don't have a drainage network, you don't have a stormwater management system in some roads, they rely on that country drainage to get the water off the road. You can't put in sidewalk because you'll just be creating puddles. So those are the considerations we have to take into account when we design and construct. The other thing that comes into play is maintenance. You know, we're going to build sidewalks. Well, who's going to maintain the sidewalks? You know, the DPW has sidewalk plows, but you know, it takes a long time after a snowstorm to get out and to clear all those sidewalks, you know. I know some towns look to enact bylaws or ordinances to make the residents along that frontage responsible for clearing that sidewalk. You know, some towns within 24 hours of the end of the storm, the resident has to clear that. So, you know, those are all thoughts that we've had, and, you know, we're just trying to put everything together and make sure we do it, you know, so that it benefits the town as a whole. But the one thing I did want to talk about was the planning board funding that is in place. You know, and how the DPW and engineering division can help the planning board, you know, take the funding that was given in lieu of constructing sidewalks in certain developments and bring that to fruition. You know, where would the board like to see those sidewalks, and how can the DPW and engineering help that and make that happen? So, you know, that's kind of the update I have. That's, you know, what we're doing, what we've done, and I want to see if the board has any questions, comments, concerns.
He stole my line. I'm going to start with Mr. Fowler, because I think you've lived this the longest, so,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
well, you know what I mean. 30 years on the board, Mr. Fowler. You've had your
many
share of
years?
sidewalk interests.
How many years?
30, 35? 35. Am I shorting you?
Keep counting. Thank you, Kevin. I have one question relative, not necessarily sidewalks, but it follows hand in glove. If, especially when you set a 25-year plan, that kind of set the tide in my mind. This is interesting. It just helps me with what I want to talk about. Bicycle access on streets that can accept it. In other words, if you have proper frontage, proper width taking, and for the two lanes coming and going, if you have enough land, paved road, what do you need? I guess that's the way to do it. How many feet do you need to have paved lot, 2 lanes, and an access for a bike paths, marked, you know, delineated bike paths?
So the minimum lane width right now, according to Mass DOT, is 11 feet. So you need 2 11-foot lanes. And then at a minimum, you need a 5-foot bike lane.
Right.
You know, when possible, you bump that up to 8. You know, but you're really looking at, you know, plus the double yellow line in the middle, you know, that's another foot there. So, you know, you're looking at probably 33 feet of pavement to get that width in there. Now, the project we're doing at South Salem and Maine, as well as at Andover and River, are both going to add those bike lanes into that work. You know, so we do try to fit all accommodations where we can. You know, but again, there's obstructions we deal with, whether it's topography or utilities or, you know, stone walls, things like that we have to work around.
I mean, I say that not only because we can't put the sidewalks everywhere right away, but we've got to do something with this, especially in light of the fact that children are out on the road more so as of now, the schools are out.
Right.
And if they're marked, at least it gives a message to the driver that it's a bike path, and you can move to the left. Now, were you saying it'd be on both sides?
If you did have a bike lane, preferably you like to have it on both sides.
Okay.
So you have a 5-foot lane on either side.
Yeah.
Now,
So that's how you're up to 30s. Yeah, okay.
right, there are what they call share rows, which is a shared use between a vehicle and a bicycle.
Right.
In which you put the symbols on the road, you put the signage, so that what you're trying to do is if you can create a Shero, for example, if you create a Shero on Pleasant Street in Tewksbury, right? And you mark that signage, the goal is that cyclists are more likely going to use Pleasant Street as opposed to Marshall or Chandler to get from Main Street to
sure.
Shawshene, because that's a marked lane, and because motorists will be more alert to the presence of cyclists.
Well, I appreciate you answering the question. Obviously, it's on your calendar.
It is. As a runner and a cyclist, I take a great interest in bike
right.
paths.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
I guess the one question I have is, I don't know if I'll be around for another 25 years. So the thing is, how much work can we get done in 10 years? Which is a palatable number. You know, how many miles do we go in 10?
So I don't have a definite answer for that. Because a good example is the 2,000 feet on Pleasant Street, right? Which is about 0.4 of a mile that we were able to create a sidewalk on. Cost the town about $160,000 to do that. So you're talking $80 a linear foot, design, construction, and Pleasant Street was probably the ideal situation. We had a couple trees to take down, no one had fences to move, things like that. So, when we look at it, Foster Road, it has a lot of obstructions that we're dealing with, trying to figure out which side is the easier side to build a sidewalk on. Where do we have room to do that? Unfortunately, when you look at a 2,000-foot stretch of road in Tewksbury, well, the first 1,000 could be on this side, and the second 1,000 could be on the other side. Now you have to contend with, well, is it safe to put a crosswalk to get people to the other side, or do you try to, unfortunately, build it with more increased cost to keep it all on one side of the road? To get back to your question, as far as what can we get done in 10 years, with the list I've provided, with a couple miles of sidewalk being added this year, my goal would be we could add a couple miles each year, and that might get us 20 miles in the next 10 years.
Now, have you worked out a cost for the maintenance of it, of the new sidewalks? I mean, we got sidewalks, we're gonna put sidewalks more and more.
Right.
Everybody in the town is voting for sidewalks, but when they see what it's gonna cost to maintain them, are they gonna be able to approve the money to maintain the sidewalks?
Right, that's a great question. We haven't looked at a cost per linear foot for maintenance on the sidewalks. As far as snow clearing on the sidewalks, it's highly variable, because as you know, the DPW is on the west side of town, and if we have to take our machine and go up to Andover Street to clear a sidewalk, and we either have to truck it up there or drive along the side of the road at 5 miles an hour, because that's the speed some of those pieces of equipment travel. That cost is highly variable. From a construction standpoint, $80 per linear foot to design and construct a sidewalk. To replace a sidewalk once it's met its useful life and needs to be resurfaced, that cost significantly drops, because you're just putting it back in the same place. I'd be guessing if I, gave you a number, but, it may be, $15 to $20 a linear foot to just peel it and pave it again. So, those are things that we're looking at for some of the existing sidewalk networks that have met their useful life. And we want to, replace those so that they're maintained in good condition as well. I hope I gave you enough information and didn't dance
You
around it
did.
too much.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitalia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, thank you for the presentation. Looking at these list of sidewalks that we need, it's pretty overpowering as far as how many sidewalk feet we need. And one of my questions I was going to ask was how many feet does it cost? How much money does it cost per foot for sidewalks? So that's, like you're saying, $80?
Roughly $80 a foot
Okay.
would be a good cost, and that's in general. That's, if we don't have drainage work to do, are we, just doing asphalt? If we decide some areas should have concrete, Main Street is a good example where we like to see concrete sidewalks, vertical granite curbing, those costs could jump to $100 a foot.
Sure, okay. Another question I had was the Shawshene idea of doing the sidewalks. What side of the street are we looking at, or is there a favorable side? Because one of the sides has a lot of wetlands on one side, I think, right? Or just,
It does. The Shawshene River follows the eastern side of, or kind of southeastern side of Shawshene Street. But surprisingly enough, there have been sidewalks on that side up toward Ballard, up by Breckenridge in the past.
Yeah.
So that would be an easier side to construct it on, because in that area, the opposite side of the road, which is the even numbered side of the road, you've got steep slopes up into front yards. So we'd have to contend with the topography there. But kind of our assessment of it would be that it would be on the southeastern side, the Bridge Street side.
Sure.
The Shawshene River side of it. Just because that seems to be a little more favorable for construction.
good. I did attend a meeting in Andover of the development down there, and they don't want to give us nothing really to speak of. I mean, hopefully to some mediation, we can get some money towards some sidewalks in Tewksbury, but the initial meeting that I attended was minimal at all, at best, for Tewksbury's interest. So that's unfortunate, because we could use them down there to pay for something,
Right.
a big development like that, so. Another question I have is, the funding that we approve here for fee in lieu of sidewalks, where does that money go?
That's held in an account and needs to be released by the board. So,
Okay.
and that's what, part of the reason I wanted to come in front of the board tonight is to open up that dialogue as to, where the board wants to see sidewalks installed. And then we would assist and utilize that funding to create those sidewalks.
Good, okay. Now, I looked at these maps, Kevin, they're dated December 15, 2017. But are these accurate, up to date, do you think?
With the exception of Pleasant Street,
Okay,
yes.
okay, because I didn't know how much we've done since that date on this map, so, but, okay. The other question, I know Mr. Delaney mentioned about sidewalks and who's gonna take care of them. I know when it's snowing out, I end up snow plowing about 500 feet of sidewalk on my street because nobody wants to snow blow the sidewalks.
Okay.
It's like, it should be their responsibility. I mean, I have grandkids and kids in the street that walk those sidewalks to the bus stop, but for some reason, people don't feel the need to, take care of the sidewalk in front of the house. So maybe we could do a better job with the town of relaying that message that, listen, sidewalk in front of your house, if you have time, could plow it, and clear out the hydrants, because
Right.
I drive around town and I see hydrants that aren't cleared. I'm like,
Yeah.
someone's got to take that responsibility of clearing the hydrant. God forbid somebody needs it and it's not cleared out. I mean, I do it in front of my own house, and I would feel horrible if that wasn't cleared in the event that it was needed by the firemen in town. So, but that's all. But thank you so much for this presentation. Great job. So thank you. I'll say, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ryder.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I'm well aware of the struggles with sidewalks, believe me. A couple questions. Priority. How do you determine priority? Is it based on funding? Is it based on proximity to a school, development? So, because that's going to be the question, is how come Pleasant Street got it? Is it because the high school? Or why are you rolling it in with a road project? It's a lot easier. But that funding that we have, how can we determine, I know it's not easy to determine what neighborhood gets that. So do you have a priority list that engineering is using to say, if we get X dollars, this is where we'd like to, as you do a road, if you have $100,000, you fit that into that dollar value on that road.
So, and as you're well aware, there's a lot of variables that go into prioritization. One is funding. The other is schools, locations of schools, other road projects that we have going on. So, for example, when we did Pleasant Street, it starts at the high school. Being at the DPW, we see the cross-country and track teams run by on a daily basis during their seasons. We see them run up and down Pleasant Street. Driving from the DPW to Town Hall every day to have meetings and things, we see people walking up and down Pleasant Street every day. So that was a reason for that priority, or one of the reasons for that priority. Again, like I said before, Pleasant Street, it was kind of low-hanging fruit. It was an easy sidewalk to construct, not many challenges. So we saw the benefit for the school, the benefit for the residents, and then, the ease for construction. So that's why we chose that area. We've developed a project prioritization plan for the Complete Streets program, but that also includes intersections and things like that. But that's kind of the roadmap that we're looking to follow. It's based on developments, it's based on schools, it's based on resident input. Shawshene Street was a great example. We've had a lot of residents come to us and voicing concern about the amount of foot traffic on Shawshene Street and the lack of sidewalks. People that go to Market Basket and walk there on a daily basis to pick things up and come home on Shawshene Street. So, that was kind of a reason for that. And then we also look at the density and the networks that it would connect to. When you look at a stretch like Shawshene, you've got a lot of residents in neighborhoods off of Shawshene Street that aren't heavily traveled roads that you can, not easily, but it's much safer to walk on those side streets to get out to the main road to a sidewalk to get to a point of interest, whether it be a store or, to get a scoop of ice cream or things like that. So there's a whole host of factors that come into our prioritization plan. We alphabetize the list because we know that list is going to change. In the ninth year, something has to be reevaluated in town because, as you know, things develop, things change, priorities change. I could sit here and say, our priority was the schools, and we focused on all the schools in town. Well, as you know, there's a new school that was approved, so 2 schools are going to be closing. Well, so our priorities have to change based on the evolution of the town as well.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And, just so for a resident, when they ask,
Yeah.
where does my street land on the list? So can they get that? Is that on the website, or is that available through
It's in
your...
alphabetical order? No.
Is that
Well,
available at DPW? They can get it if they're...
I can give you 5 years out.
Okay.
Beyond that,
It changes, absolutely.
it changes. I don't know if the funding will still be there. I don't know if something else will come along that, will bump things. But, I can give the 5-year capital plan for sidewalks. But beyond that, it's speculative.
Understand. Thank you. And I guess to the chairman, do we know what is in the sidewalk fund currently?
Not off the top of my head, but we can get that for next time, right?
That way we may be able to...
Do you know?
Do you know, Kev?
I have a pretty good idea. I've spoken with the assistant town manager about it. I believe there's approximately $120,000 in there.
Okay.
And I forget the split. It was about $50,000, $70,000, one of which was allocated to be used on Main Street.
Okay.
And I don't know which it was, but, so there'll be Main Street sidewalks to be constructed and then sidewalks elsewhere in town.
Okay. Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess to me, some of the questions are already, but to me, when you're talking about like priorities, if that's, you want to discuss partly with us, to me, I think the most important thing, when you look at the top map, the thing you noticed right off the bat is the lack of connectivity of what is there.
Right.
Like even when there's a lot of sidewalk, whether it be Main Street or whatever, it's the dash marking of it that renders it, not passable in sections, which eliminates the likelihood someone's going to walk from point A to point B because you can't get from A to B. So to me, I think the most important thing would be starting where you can connect up the most often first. Again, sticking with main roads first, obviously. You're talking about main streets, North Streets, Livingston, because they're the ones that, in some cases, they have some already in place. but they need the next piece to get them to maybe another piece that does exist.
Right.
And that's what seems to be missing in a lot of the areas of town where you can see so much red, and then suddenly there's a drop, and then there's red again, and there's a drop. And I mean, it doesn't take long for a person walking to figure out, I can't get there from here,
Right.
kind of thing. So to me, I think it's that, and then working sort of from a center out, meaning the main roads or points of interest. Like you mentioned, you want to get to the library, you want to get to the schools, you want to get to the senior center, you want to get to the ball fields, playgrounds, whatever, whichever one you're talking about, whether it's the baseball fields up on East, or you're talking about Livingston Street itself for the majority of the playground stuff, or it's Long Pond. Would it recreationally? I mean, if you talk about, you just finished all of Chandler Street, and you see you want to do Whipple Road, but obviously that's a huge chunk. None of it really has any paving now. So for something like that, I would think looking at Long Pond as a start point and teeing out from there, because you're gonna go Chandler, you've already got Pleasant, and as you start branching out, at least that way you have a way to get down to Long Pond, for an example.
Right.
And then, eventually, hopefully you get across Whipple, but each time you're gonna meet the next big road, whereas suppose if you're going from the other way, it starts to be the sidewalk to nowhere until you find a place to connect. So to me, I think that's, if we're talking about priorities, that to me seems to be, the connectivity first, where there's the ability to get roads completed, or sidewalks completed, I guess, on a road, would be the most important. And then the second would be to take the points of interest and work out from them as best you can, so people can get there from as many places as you can until you get to your 25-year full map. Because I think, when we build the sidewalks that don't really get anyone anywhere, they look great, they sit
Right.
there, but they look like an island. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then sometimes that's what we're faced with. We'll have a project come in and, it would call for a sidewalk, but then we're looking at it like, all right, but that's literally the sidewalk to nowhere. And
Right.
it would look great, it's part of the rule, but then, we're looking at ourselves like, that makes no sense. That's not gonna get anyone anywhere. We'd much prefer to see it on Main Street or, whatever road to start with. And, maybe someday you get back there, but to have that person build it then sometimes just doesn't make sense, certainly to us. So I think that's, to me, I think that's the most important thing, is to start connecting things up so people have a reason to go out and walk around, because they know they can get to something from somewhere. That, I think, to me.
I completely agree, and that's one of the things we did look at when we developed the plan. As you know, I said earlier, East and Chandler Street, that intersection is top of our prioritization plan for complete streets, and we received a $400,000 grant to rebuild that intersection, add sidewalks, bike lanes, new signals, bring things up to where they should be. And that project will connect the senior center to the library, the senior center down sidewalks to down East Street to Town Hall. As you know, we've got sidewalks from Town Hall down to the library. You've got the new development over on Livingston Street with a lot of residences. You've got the farm stand, the baseball field. I mean, those are things we're looking at, is where are the missing teeth, and how do we fill those in? Because those are sometimes short stretches of sidewalk that will connect two long stretches of sidewalk that will get you somewhere.
I mean, I know you mentioned like North Street, where the North Street school was, going in, so it might change priorities. And I've still, it's not so much sidewalk as it is just connectivity again. I've still thought, back when we started with the town center stuff, which was that if you could run walking paths, I'm pretty sure they can get from North Street School through those soccer fields and back out to the senior center, depending, the routes through. Again, it's another one of those things to build into. You got sidewalks, but if you build in, we've talked about the bike paths, these recreational things to get people moving around town.
Right.
That's the kind of route that eventually you would hope would be, it comes from town center, right up through North, through those fields, and, back out to the senior center, you're back to the library, and you're back down Main Street again. That's a loop of things worth getting to around town.
Exactly.
And if you have a way and a reason to sort of take those routes, they might get people moving around. And, you have a little less zipping along 38 and a little bit more people walking around. that they have some reason to do it. So, but that's it for me. Mr. Fowler?
One question, Route 38, State Road, but I notice our plan calls for the red to be yellow or yellow to be on one side, and now do you want to have it on both sides? Who's paying for that?
That's a great question. So we have a project, well, not we, Mass DOT has a project on the
Right.
tip right now.
Right.
Which goes from about Archstone down to Colonial Drive.
Correct.
They're going to be resurfacing, adding sidewalks, ADA ramps through that whole corridor.
Good.
That is federally funded.
Okay.
I've been talking with the town manager about getting 2 additional projects onto the Transportation Improvement Plan, Transportation Improvement Program, which would be to extend from Colonial Drive down to Shawshene Street.
I like your
and do that
thoughts.
corridor. Make sure there's sidewalks throughout that whole stretch.
Good.
You know, we have some challenges.
Yep.
There's some wetland crossings and things like that we have to contend with and figure out how to get past those. But that's a project we're going to try to get on the tip, as well as the center of town, to see what can be done to.
Kevin, you're making me smile, and I like that.
Yeah.
I have a second question, but you know what? I'm not going to ask it now because I still want to smile. So I think it'll be too difficult, not for you to answer, but for the town to absorb.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask one more. I don't think it'll end your smiling or anything, but what I'd also like too is, I mean, you see all our projects. They all have to come by you. You know, I think the board members wouldn't mind if, you know, we have a project where it, by rules, calling for sidewalks. And more than likely, we're going to get to the point where we're going to say, that doesn't make sense. But for you to chime in on that and say, hey, I'm seeing that the likelihood is that this is supposed to call for sidewalks. I'll tell you now that I could see where taking the fee in lieu and putting it into the sidewalk could help us get to X project or something like that, and just go ahead and say that. And it helps our decision-making, because, I mean, a lot of times we're going to end up there anyways, whether it's we give up one side and do one, or maybe it doesn't need it at all for whatever reason. But to have you sort of chime in and say, you know, I'm looking at like what the trade-off would be here in terms of what would go into the fund, that might get us to X project.
Right.
And I think that's useful, because again, I think we always see projects on a one-by-one basis, whereas you've got something like this in your, you know, in your office every day, and you're like,
Yeah.
you see it go by, and the two connect more often than they're going to for us maybe. In where are you on your next project? Like, how close are you? And you know, might that be something that makes sense? And you know, to tell us that, you know, when you give us your, you know, your evaluation on a project, I think would be useful, and I don't think anyone would mind
Right.
to have you chime in on it.
Yeah, so on that, you know, we've had a lot of discussions internally about, you know, a good example is a dead-end cul-de-sac subdivision, you know, which the regulations require sidewalks on both sides. Well, do you waive one side and build sidewalk and take a fee in lieu for the other side? And it all comes down to cost. You know, what is that fee in lieu of? Because if it's cheaper for a developer who's already in there, who's already disturbed the ground to put the sidewalk in, than to pay the town a fee for that, they're gonna put the sidewalk in, and most likely it's a sidewalk to nowhere. So I think discussions have to be made regarding what that fee would be, because it needs to be fair and equitable on both sides.
Right.
You know, if it's gonna be a sidewalk to nowhere, it really should be waived with a fee in lieu of, so that the town can put it in a more advantageous location. You know, and those are things that, you know, that I think all stakeholders need to be on board with, you know, when that process comes up.
So I think maybe we also look at whether or not we tweak how the bylaw decides whose decision it is on those, you know, those sidewalks. You know what I mean? Maybe we have more power in making that decision and leaving it less up to the total discretion of the builders.
One difficult thing with that is, as Kevin stated, will take the fee in lieu of, the contractor's probably installing that for about $35 a linear foot. We're paying prevailing wage, so it's double, you know, and that's the tough thing. So when you ask for that concession, you know, it's a significant discount in terms of what we have to, the town has to pay. And that's a
Right.
difficult thing, and and I mean, as I said before, the struggles, I hear it all the time, that, you know, how come it costs so much money? And that in Massachusetts, it's prevailing wage, and labor costs are significant for a municipality. So when you say $80 a linear foot, you know, you may have contractors out there listening and say, oh, I can do it for $35 a foot, or $28 a foot. Yes, you can, but there's a lot of things that go on with that.
And I think that's where that back and forth discussion has to be made, where, you know, say a subdivision gets 1,000 feet of sidewalk waived. Well, yeah, ideally, the fee would be given for the town to construct 1,000 feet of sidewalk. But that's not, you know, real world, because the contractor is just gonna go in and build that 1,000 feet for what the town would get 600 feet. And I think that's where the discussion needs to start is, you know, if the town is looking at expanding the network in locations that make sense and have connectivity and are prioritized, then we really need to look at, you know, a system of waiving sidewalks that would benefit the town and the developer, you know?
And that goes with the zoning bylaw, that we could put some language in there towards that. It would, you know.
We got time now.
We got time.
Steve,
Yes, sir.
I still have one question to Mr. Hart. If the state on Route 38 puts in the sidewalks, okay, it's the town of Tewksbury that has to maintain them?
Correct.
That's my question.
Actually, I guess that would be the only other one. You mentioned the thing about a bylaw to deal with the sidewalks now at this point, as we're starting to get to them. I mean, I have no problem if that's something that we do, but I think the thing you hear the most, I think, in most places, is you got to find a way to exempt, help out seniors. Like, they can't be out there shoveling the sidewalk that got put in just because it happens to be in front of their house, and they're killing themselves to get the sidewalk clean because otherwise they're going to get fined. Like, I can't get behind that, but I don't know how you make that rule, I don't know how you write it up right, but I think that would be the priority to creating that. But I think the rules is necessary to start dealing with the sidewalks, because we can't run the machine around the entire town and expect it to clear every sidewalk after a storm, or, you know, it'll be spring by the time the entire road system, sidewalk system's done. But there's no way we can expect, I mean, you see it in Boston sometimes, and you'll hear seniors complain that they're expected to go out and, you know, clear in front of that, and they just can't do it. And it doesn't make sense. It's not a...
Because they have sidewalks that are 40 feet long, because that's their frontage.
Right.
150 feet here.
Well,
Right.
I discussed 150 feet recently. I don't remember what it was about, but
Some of the sidewalks, I mean, the existing sidewalks don't meet standards.
Right.
The equipment's too large to get down.
Right.
The smaller pieces of equipment
I mean,
are
yeah,
too
there's-
slow.
Yeah.
So it's.
there's parts of Main Street, you know they can't go over that sidewalk.
And,
Right.
and you, as you stated, the dotted lines, you drive any of the sidewalk plows down there, they're off and on the sidewalk
Right.
50 times.
Right.
And then you still have that section of 2 feet, would it be a telephone pole, a fire hydrant?
But we're probably getting close to that teetering point where we're going to have to put something in
Yes.
that does address that,
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Because, you know, the other thing to consider is the vehicles that are brought out to plow those sidewalks are driven by DPW staff, who has been responding to a snow and ice operation probably for the previous 36 hours. And, you know, and now, you know, they need some rest before they go out, but sidewalks are a priority.
Right.
You know, those need to get cleaned as well. You know, they can't wait for 2 days after a storm, because school will be open, and, you know, it's a safety issue.
Yeah, most communities are 1,000 feet, within 1,000 feet of a school, within 24 hours, 36 hours, and it's based upon how many inches of snow you get. I mean, and then it's a constant battle.
Right.
You know?
I think it'd be a study of what other municipalities have done in the state, and see, you know, where should Tewksbury fall in their policies.
All right, well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment.
Todd?
We have done that fee in lieu of, Kevin, on the last project we had on Astle Street. we only did one side of the street, and we took the fee in lieu of, because it didn't make sense to do both sides of the street in that little project, so.
Right.
So we're always,
Yeah.
attentive to that.
Oh, did you-
Little compromise, I don't want to give up both sides.
No,
No
I-
sidewalks, because if I have grandchildren now, that mothers and fathers walking their kids on they need a sidewalk.
Right.
So,
No,
I'd be willing to go with the one side and not both sides. It's just-
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardeman. I appreciate you coming in. Obviously, it is a topic of interest to everybody, or a lot of people in town, so glad we had a chance to go through it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time. We'll continue to build sidewalks where we can. I know the board and the public will see a lot of projects going on this summer.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's Main Street, I was just made aware that Mass DOT is looking to resurface a portion of Main Street from Old Boston Road to Pike Street by August, by mid-August, so,
It's always that trade-off, you're like, that's good, and then you're in the way.
Yeah.
But it's the time for doing it, so.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, moving on to agenda item B3, 307 Old Boston Road, non-substantial change request.
Yeah.
No, this is a change based on the time of
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Dick Cuco, representing Mr. John Allegado. We're here for a non-substantial change, a couple items. The sign, I'll actually go first because that's what I had just handed out. We got the memo from Anna on the sign being 20 square feet, so there's only going to be one tenant in the building. So what we did was we changed the sign, we lowered it down a little bit, and the sign is now 20 square feet, so it's 5 by 20. And then on the right-hand side of the rendering, it shows the side post, so from both directions, they'll have the house number 307 on it. So that was the issue with there. But the main reason for coming in, when you look at the original sign that the board approved, was it didn't have a planter. This is what the main focus of the non-substantial changes is to add the planter. So we had, I sent a few exhibits over to DPW, and we got the letter back from Randy, which you should have a copy here. It's actually signed by Kevin Hardeman, but they looked at it and said that they were satisfied that the planter was not going to interfere with the town right-of-way. And there's also a force main there, but this force main is on the street side of the planter, so they wouldn't have to, if they ever had to do any work on the force main, it wouldn't interrupt that. So that was the issue with the non-substantial change based on the sign. The second item is that, also pointed out in Ms. McGinty's letter is that the Section 5253 states the standing sign may not be erected within 15 feet of a street line or 10 feet of a lot line. We've already got a waiver on that on the original special permit. Then the part about the trees, if any of you have been out near the site, you'll notice that National Grid came through there and just completely devastated the area. So the trees that were proposed within 7 years would also be within that 20-foot circle of confluence. Because this is an old lot, going back to Mass Electric, they used to take a blanket easement on the property. So, because I first went over there when they did that, I'm saying, how do they cut these trees down there? But in the old days, let's call it, they had a blanket easement because they didn't know where the service lines were going to go. So they just completely, cleared it all out. So we were back and we talked to our landscape architect, so he suggested that we change the one tree that's in the parking lot, which wouldn't be affected by the power line, to a red maple or something like that. But the 4 trees that we have proposed along the front would be crabapple trees because they don't get any higher than like 10 feet or 12 feet or something like that there. So if you've also been by there, you notice that they have all the landscaping in now, but for the trees. And they're holding off on that, hopefully that the board will be understanding that this is a waiver that we just don't want to waste the money putting trees in and then 7 years from now have them cut down, or even worse, they just cut the fronts off and, you have like a lopsided tree. So that's what we're here this evening to ask the board.
All right, so Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. I've been by the site. I think it looks great. I agree, planting a tree that will meet future guidelines with National Grid, and, they will. They'll just cut one side. They don't care. They literally will go up one side and not think anything out it. So I agree that changing that is a wise decision. I think the crabapple, actually, a better-looking tree over there. They've done a nice job. And then one thing on, now, this is the sign that you're going with, and in the packet you had,
Yeah, what happened was we got when we got the review letter from Anna, she pointed out that the sign was too big, so
Okay.
we brought it back. I just got this from the sign guy today, so the ones that are in your packet are obsolete.
okay. I mean, just the fact that there is no number on the face of the sign, I think that would be helpful. I actually liked the original design with the triangle on the top that gave you the street address and the number. It looked better. But if you can incorporate that, whether it be down on the lower section.
Well, I think what we could do is we could add it below the tenant, because I don't think the number,
The numbers.
Don, the street number doesn't count in your square
No.
footage. So
So
we
if-
could also add it at the bottom.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
On that. No, I think, like I said, they're doing a great job out there. Looks good.
Mr. Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having reading the notes here, Dick, I had seen crabapple, and I was thinking the crabapple tree with the apples being falling all over the street, but having done some homework, I understand it's a pink flowering tree with a good shape and good density as far as that goes.
I think every other year it has a little
Blossom.
red, like the size of a jackball when the kids were small, and then it's just about fall to the, and they just get picked up with the lawnmower.
I did see that they showed it as, on the internet, 20 feet high and 20 feet wide, but I know a little bit more than what you were expecting, but I'm sure it can always be trimmed, so, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is they can be pruned to not, if you let them go, but with the swamp white oak, you can't prune them because they'll die.
yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, the sign looks great. If we add that number on, like Mr. Ryder mentioned, I think that'll look fine, so. So the concrete pad that's there is where the sign is going, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Didn't seem like you could see it too well coming in off of Main Street, but
Well-
because of that telephone pole there.
Yeah, the problem is with Main Street, you can't really see it that good. That's why we asked to move it as far forward as we could. Actually, National Grid kind of did us a favor. You can actually see it a little better now than, but when it's up, we put a piece of plywood up to check it, and when it was up,
It's okay?
it looked okay. So what I would just ask is that depending, I'm gonna ask the sign fellow whether the 307's on the bottom or the top. It might look better on the top. So if that's okay with the board, we'll leave it up to his discretion.
Sounds good. All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Ryder.
You already-
Already gone.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah,
Mr. Fowler?
You've answered just about all the questions. The only thing is, the one question I have, and I can't find the paper that said it was okay, because the foundation of the sign wouldn't, with the sewer easement, it won't affect?
No, because the actual sewer line is like 5 feet in front of that.
Actually, I note there.
But, even if it was, I mean, it's in the sewer easement, it's just like the driveway. If the town had to dig it up, it's incumbent upon the landowner to put it back.
Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler?
And likewise, I am too. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a conversation about the preferences to try and have the signs have these kind of bases, and they look better, so I think that's ideal. If it fits and it's not in anything's way that can't be dealt with, then I have no problem with that. Obviously, the number thing, we always like those on there, so that's fine. Made the adjustment on the sign, so that's good, and Mr. Vitalia, I was in the same thing. When I first saw Crab Apple, I'm like, it's gonna be a mess. I'm like, okay, so it's not gonna be a mess, that's fine. So with that, I'm okay with the type of tree, probably makes more sense, so that's fine. Otherwise, what is
I
the,
have another question, Mr. Chairman, that I forgot. Mr. Cuco, how did we end up with the sidewalk question in that, on the project?
That was a fee that was paid to the town.
The entire sidewalk?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all set. Thanks.
actually, I swear, didn't we have to come back and clarify that? Like, didn't we do that we had to clarify that at some point, yeah.
We had to come back.
Yeah,
Thought we did some and some or something, no?
I believe it
Was it all?
that's what we had to come back and clarify.
There was a question on that.
We had to come back and clarify it because they had said something about double the
Different numbers,
fee and-
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was there one more question? No? All right, so what is the pleasure of the board on this?
Motion to approve.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the non-substantial change using the
Yes.
submittal this evening for sign size, the notation on the numbers with the addition of the number either on the
On
top
face.
or below, as is best in the field, and the change for the trees from landscaping to the 4 crab apples as described as well. Does that work? All right, a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coon.
All right, moving on to agenda item B4, which is 1583 and 1625 Andover Street concept plan.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering, 10 George Street, Lowell. Also here this evening is Mr. David Daly with the Daly Group, and also Jonathan Miller with the Daly Group. We're here this evening to propose 2 projects, one of which would be a project for a drive-through coffee shop that would be in place of the previously approved office building at 1583 Andover Street, which was a special permit that was originally granted by the board a couple years ago. We were unable to get a tenant into that office space, so we couldn't build that out. We've been trying to find different tenants to occupy that land, and we do have a tenant that does want to occupy that space, and that is Aroma Joe's, which is a smaller condensed coffee shop. And that's this parcel here.
Yep.
The second piece of this project is going to be this odd triangular piece here, which if the board recalls, there was a Honeydew Donuts and a Subway approved some years ago on this parcel. That project didn't move forward. Mr. Daly actually bought that piece of land, but did not have that permit. And we've been trying to find a good use for that. As the board recalls, I think we came in with a car wash at one point, which was not looked at favorably, I guess, during that process. And then we're going to propose this restaurant here, which is shown here in brown. There'll be a curb cut for that here, parking in and around the side of it here. And we're also going to propose an access drive from the hotel. It'll be beneficial for all parties adjacent to each other, so that folks at the hotel can come up into the restaurant and vice versa via this access drive. We also, as part of the layout of this project, we were getting kind of bottlenecked at the end of the parking area. So we also provided an access out and in to the access drive that goes in through the center of the project. So that also provides an avenue for folks coming from the Lowell 5 Bank site. Also, folks that are coming from the daycare facility site, the ATM. So all these different uses here can now utilize these multiple access points to get to the restaurant or even to the hotel for that matter, without going back out onto Andover Street. Also, this connection is also here for the coffee shop as well. There was always an access easement coming through the site for the office building. And so now if someone gets their coffee and they want to go to the bank or go to the daycare or to Lowell 5, or to the restaurant for that matter, can go through this site here, get to this main access drive, and get to the various associated businesses within this area without having to go back out onto Andover Street. So I think it makes sense to have these multiple access points, and it just seemed to fit, and we've spent a fair amount of time working with different potential tenants for this all to work for everybody so that their businesses can thrive in what is now this entire development through here. So that's essentially our project. This is the view of the restaurant from this direction here. It's going to be a small patio outside the restaurant. It's going to be an Italian-style restaurant. We do have a lease with that tenant. And then here we have the Aroma Joe's drive-through, which is actually looking at it from this direction here. This coffee shop has 2 drive-through windows here. There's no seating in these coffee shops. Their average pass-through time on a customer is less than 1.5 minutes. So they go through fairly rapidly. We also have here some queuing here. You know, and here we have 12 vehicles queued in here. We have a couple parking spots here, a few employee spots. But this type of facility really doesn't typically get people who come out of their vehicle to go into the building because they can't sit down. And this is the queuing for that, for the drive-through. And I can answer any questions from the board.
Since you have one on the bottom that kind of looks like the job address, would you flip the other one back to, nope, this one up here, would you flip that one back to the restaurant?
Sure.
Perfect. All right, we'll start with Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I appreciate Mr. Daly's stick-to-itiveness.
Back at it again.
That's it, that's fine. I like the project. What I'm seeing is a large step for what was planned there before we bought that triangular lot. And I'm very, very happy with that, especially if it's something that looks like that. At this juncture, do you have anyone ready for either of those two lots?
Well, the good news is, as you know, and well aware, that we've done our due diligence on these projects in the last couple of years, and that was kind of the linchpin was to get tenants to bite in. We couldn't, as Matt relayed, the fact that we couldn't get anyone to move forward on the medical office building. So as we talked about, this site previously was for a Honeydew and a Subway. We flipped that around, and we have, to answer your question directly, we have two tenants, one for the restaurant and one for the coffee shop, all lined up and ready to go. So we wanted to get to that point before we brought anything before the board.
That's fine, I understand, thank you.
Sure.
No, my only question is the state going to allow 4 curb cuts? There's already 2 there now. Do you foresee any problems with 4 curb cuts within that short
This is
period of
local.
time?
Actually, this is not a state
Tewksbury.
governed section of roadway.
We found that out last time. We thought it was too, and I think it starts as a state road just past the restaurant, east of the restaurant.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
International Drive.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
That's where it
Yeah.
turns to state.
well, that answers that question.
And Matt, and we did, just to get into a little bit more detail, we did have a meeting with, an informal, we had the abutters list. We sent out a meeting for all the abutters to join us to have any questions ahead of this meeting or any other public hearing that we'll have before you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
And we had coffee and donuts one morning, and people came out, and a couple of people came out. We had a pretty good showing, and people expressed the fact that they were pretty excited about having, and that's just to get the feedback that we were getting. The fact that people wanted a restaurant, they wanted commercial use, number one, and then they wanted some type of new ability, a new choice in town to go eat in that area or to grab a coffee. And so that's when we were able to engage some different entities to do that. The other good news about the food, the two, especially the restaurant, is not a national chain. We had been approached by national chains. I don't think that some of those uses would have been very much applauded by the board or the local neighborhood either. So we backed away from that, and we have a local entrepreneur that has been in the restaurant business for 25 years, has a great concept, and I think we'll do really well there.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
I think it's a great idea for up there. The only question I have is, and I think I asked the same question when you were trying to do the car wash, the amount of cars that are going to go in there for coffee. What happens if they start to back out onto 133? That's the, you're going to be able to handle those cars fast enough. Then you got exits both ways. What happens if a car comes in and prevents everybody from moving? He's stuck.
The studies have shown on this particular use, it's really focused on coffee, this place, Aroma Joe's. They do sell some sandwiches and stuff. Their turnaround time is significantly quicker, as Matt handled. We can provide that to the board than any type of McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. because so many people buy the food, whereas this is more, the more people are buying the actual coffee products. We do have 12 cars in queue, and one of my biggest concerns is when we engage this entity is the fact that we weren't going to have those same issues that you'll see, not at this particular spot or anywhere else, but that in Lowell, if you go to Lowell on Chelmsford Street, they probably have like maybe 7 or 8 cars queued, but they're always backed up. We don't anticipate that to be an issue at all. We've gone through the numbers with this company, and their turnaround time is quick enough that we don't anticipate that.
I'd like to add one, because we've discussed that same issue. We do have a coffee shop down the street too, and it's a gas station and a Dunkin' Donuts. So, you know, those are two entities with mobile and Dunkin' Donuts right down the street that if it was to be backed up, they know there's another place right down the street. So it's not like it's the only coffee shop around, which I think does matter. So I think that is a factor.
I'm all set.
I will ask another question. This is not a joke. My wife will ask me, is there going to be a Starbucks? That's all.
Yeah.
That's, no.
They want to be on Main Street, I can tell you that.
I know that, yeah. Right. Every time.
See if we can't find another place too.
You get it.
Mr. Ryder?
Thank you. You know, looking, I want to kind of follow up on Mr. Delaney's question. If, after seeing the numbers from the coffee shop, have you looked at potentially using that as an entrance only off of Andover Street and pulling them, it really would come based upon the numbers, what they're doing. I know the turnaround's quick on these. It just, if you could queue them and pull them through the easement, what you already have, an easement at the daycare, have you looked at that?
They can do that.
Okay.
So there's nothing to prevent them from doing that. We're just not going to be promoting it as a means of access.
Okay.
But yeah.
It's an outlet.
Well, not only that, but we have multiple uses adjacent to us that folks are going to be, at least I would be trying to do maybe a couple things at once. So there's going to be a proportionate number of those people will be utilizing those other businesses. So, for instance, if you're going to the daycare and it is full, you might opt to go into the daycare first, maybe walk over and get your coffee, or drive over and get your coffee, and vice versa. So that and the ATM, we feel as though that with that, those additional associated uses in the complex provides a different means for the folks to get their coffee. So it's not just one entry.
Yes, and to piggyback on that, as you can see, there's a main, right now at the site, as you can see, there's a main entrance, and I think people will define what their best access into that. So if there's problems with queuing in that main entrance into the coffee shop, they'll come into the main entrance by the ATM, and there'll be a different queue line potentially in a worst case scenario. I just don't ever see it happening because of the turnaround time.
Yeah, it was just based on the numbers with the.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I see that you have access. Have you spoken to the hotel, obviously, you know, parcel owners? Have you contacted, you know, how is that going to impact the bank? How is that going to impact, I know there's an easement.
So, yeah, we're going to
Daycare.
get into that detail. We're currently in discussions with the hotel, so it's either going to be an access road or a sidewalk.
Okay. So there'll be ultimate access for them. It may not be a.
Yeah. We're in discussions with Lowell 5 as well for a licensing agreement for parking, which is going to be it's going to be 30 spaces for the employees of the restaurant to be able to park.
Overflow after hours and so forth.
It's kind of this dead zone parking area when I forget the prior tenant, I believe it was Cisco, it had, you know, a lot of employees. So they had this overflow parking that to this day really is not fully utilized. So we're still in a letter of understanding phase with Lowell 5 in order to supplement the parking for the employees there so we can increase our number of seats, because the restaurant size is dependent on the number of spaces you can provide to it. Because relates to number of seats.
It makes sense, you already have the sidewalk along the daycare. You
Yeah.
have the crosswalk, existing crosswalk in place already. But I think, both designs, I think if you keep them in that same look that you did with the ATM and then the daycare, I think it's going to add value to that area.
Yep.
So, nice, thank you.
Steve, I have one question. I see a handicap parking space. Is that so that they can go and use the men's room and ladies' room? Because you said there was
It's
nobody
just-
going in.
It's a requirement that you have a handicap parking space regardless. It could be for an employee, it could be for someone that's coming in to get some coffee, so we have to have that space.
And there's a full bathroom for any visitors or someone wants to walk inside and get a coffee as well.
I mean, the
Good
question sounds silly, but
Yeah, you're on the run, you're like, you know what, let's pull in here. Let's get a place ready to go.
I'm all set, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also like the project. I visioned the access into the donut shop and so forth, and in and out, coffee shop rather. Where would the ordering point be for the coffee?
So this coffee shop has two windows.
Okay?
There's two here, and then when you come around the site, it's gonna be here,
Okay.
and there can be one here for ordering up in this area here in this green space.
Reason being is it's a very, very similar design as the Dunkin' Donuts on Main Street, which I frequent regularly. I come in near the Pike Street area. You guys are familiar with that? The Dunkin' Donuts on Pike Street? Where people come in, and the ordering location is on the backside as you come around, which allows for more cars to queue coming in. If you put that ordering location on the backside around, yeah. So they can have an access to come in, order there, and then exit, so.
Matt, sorry, so the ordering is on these two left side windows, like you say.
Come around, there's a
where you
sign,
pick
it's
up.
not by
No, the
microphone.
same sign.
You open
Okay.
the window, you order.
You drive 5
The
feet.
first window?
Product, they,
Oh, I
excuse me, my name is Jonathan Miller.
Yeah,
They order here. If it's something that is gonna get served from this window, they just drive down.
sure, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have access to go all around the building
Yes.
and not cause a queue backing up
Correct.
by ordering, so,
They're not gonna stop here and order.
Exactly.
They're not gonna Stop here and order. They come all the way around.
Okay.
There's a sign right here to
Yeah.
order, and there's another sign at the next window.
And during the design phase, that was important to us because of the queuing issue. And that's the way that most of these operate anyways. The few designs are different, but we wanted to make sure that they were the furthest away from the road to allow the most cars to queue.
sure.
So it
great.
works out nice.
And I will tell you, just from experience, that I can count on my hand the number of times that I would exit out of the Main Street entrance on Dunkin' Donuts or near the Pike Street
Yep.
in Wamasett area. Because of the congestion on Pike Street and the light there, I always cut across in front of the liquor store and exit at the 99.
Okay.
And you see a lot of people do the same thing. So I would vision people coming across that easement and exiting out the other door. But-
That's called a cross-use easement.
Exactly.
good.
But I mean,
And
I
it
see
works
that,
nice.
which is nice, and it gets people out of that location rather than coming in and out of the same entrance, so just, but, I mean, the restaurant, I like the idea of the restaurant. I'm just not too happy about the easement, the access on the top of it near the bank.
Yep.
And I'll tell you why, the picture you show here, and having been at the site, I don't think there's that much green space from the design you have here.
Where's that?
At the very top, that red X is right there. So from the ATM to the entrance onto Lowell 5, I don't think there's that much green space that you show here. So if you were to take that out, you would maintain that green space
Yep.
going up the road towards Lowell 5.
Oh, yeah. We would,
So I mean, I don't think I mean, this shows like it's a long area here of green space. I don't know the footage you have here, but
This was treed. We cut those trees down.
yeah, it's all shrub now. I've been out there over the weekend, but,
Big drainage swale system here.
Right.
So it acts as a swale and there's some green on the banks.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, there is a small little
But I see what you're talking about. It isn't green in real life, but it is, because there's a swale there in the middle.
Yeah.
So you are correct. But we did have it where there was no access onto that main road previously, but we thought with crowding and people, employees going out to their car or walking out there, it might be better, or for a fire truck to get access to go in and out instead of backing around. We did have the turn radius to work, but we thought it might be a viable second option. That's all.
It just seems to me if you didn't have that access, you would maintain that green space and it'd look a lot better than having some roadway coming out of there. So,
Yeah.
but just my observation, so.
Yeah, and we did submit a pretty detailed landscaping plan in the other packet for the next planning board meeting, which will further define what's going to happen in those areas.
I mean, it's not gonna, if you didn't have that exit in that area, you wouldn't be losing any parking spaces at all. I mean, you maybe could even gain some if you had to up there, but
Yeah,
not that you need them, but I'm just saying,
There was a couple at the end,
yeah.
but when we determined that we could make that loop work and it could work for a fire truck, it kind of made sense. And actually, it was started to become a requirement for the tenant, wanted that too
Right.
as well. So we made that work that way.
I mean, after 5 o'clock, it really goes nowhere because the building's just about empty and, but,
Well, I mean,
Hey, whatever.
it's going to be open for lunch.
yeah.
It's going to be open for lunch. But you're right, when you start to get after 4 or 5 o'clock, some of the other uses are going to die down, and this restaurant's going to remain open.
I'll send with Jim, but I like the idea and I like the project, so thank you.
All right, so, yeah, I think with the drive-through, I'll start with that. Like we said, I think you probably saw the old design we had when the drive-through was in the other space. Just remembering that we wanted to look as much as like everything else in that area that we're starting to do with the, I like the design of the restaurant even more than I like the one of the coffee shop. Not that I don't like it, but again, maybe like the small portico piece on top that just gives it that look of the same as the daycare and sort of the way that restaurant's going to kind of look now. Just the fit of that whole, we just did it with we've been in the process of doing it on those buildings that are going to be potentially down at the corner of North Street and 133. So I think, just keep that in mind, because when you come back, I'm probably going to say it. So just
Good.
as a heads up.
I'm glad you did, because you and I had the same discussion before about the ATM when we came in for preliminary.
Right.
And the building, we were able to get the corporate TLE to change it into that overlay feel of like blown out rakes and nice detail, and that's what I do as a builder. I love the details. We also did that with the ATM. I still think it's probably one of the nicest looking ATMs in the state, probably. We're gonna, this Aroma Joe's doesn't give it any justice to what it's going to look like, and we'll dress that up to incorporate
Again,
that.
I like to try to do it at the preliminary, only because then it doesn't feel like I'm sandbagging somebody
I
with
totally
it when
agree with
they've
you.
done time to put in
Yep.
plans. Might as well say it now.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't have an issue with that. The only thing I'll say is that I think that this coffee place definitely seems like it would work there.
Yeah.
With the way they do things, they're strictly, not strictly, they're primarily a coffee sort of hit and run.
Yeah.
Just get in and out, get your coffee. You're not backing people up looking for, drive around in a circle and come back
Yeah.
for the sandwich.
Correct.
If that weren't going to be what was there, though, then my question would come in. So if that were to fall through, I wonder how it fits if it turns into a Starbucks, that's all. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
again, now
there's-
we're back to Mr. Fratelli's comment, which is those two windows, like they are, work for this one.
Correct.
If that were to be something else, I'd be more apt to say, I would have liked to see what you mentioned, which is those order signs, two of them back around the corner, because now you get the order in, even though the car's nowhere near the window yet, they're already working on it by the time you get up to the
Sure.
window. So that's the kind of thing that if that changes, I'm gonna wanna
You
cover
could
that
always,
base just in case.
you could always condition it if
Yeah,
this
that's
change of use.
That's what I'm telling you now.
Totally
basically.
open to that. Because
Is
I have the
that-
same concerns if they.
We don't always have a tenant mentioned, but in
Yeah.
this case, I'm sort of viewing it through that lens, but I have to think about what if something happens and, whatever.
I agree.
Things are gonna have to be a little bit different for a
With the next
different,
use.
similar use than this one.
Cool, sure.
So,
Absolutely.
as far as the restaurant, I think that's great that, you know, again, sort of a non-chain, you know, not local necessarily, but maybe it is, I have no
It is,
idea, but,
yeah.
you know, that kind of feel as opposed, you know, more mom and pop, less, you know,
Yeah, it's,
everywhere plop down kind of thing. I do like all the cross-access. I think that, I know we got away from it on Main Street because it stopped sort of working right, but I think in this complex of what's here, I think the, you know, whether it's the people at the hotel, okay, where's the easiest place to eat?
yeah.
It's right there now.
Walk right over.
You know, lunch from, you know, the corporate bank's offices, okay, how do we get there?
Sidewalks right up.
You know, the coffee stuff with the daycare. The only thing I'd say is that cut through right there, I wonder whether or not we need anything to slow it down a little. Because what you don't want is somebody to whip out of the coffee thing, blow through the, you know, the daycare parking lot to get to the, you know, like I know Mr. Ryder sort of pointed out, one of the things we had questions about before was we don't want a ton of cars to come out to that center end because there isn't a lot of room there to queue up to get out of Andover Street. I
Right.
kind of prefer them to come out where they are.
Sure.
But some people to use it, that's fine. But there's not a lot of room. People are going to get clogged up there if people are pushed to go that way.
Sure.
And, you know, so that's just something I want to think
Where's
about.
this, we're specifically with the slowdown point?
So you see where you're leaving the coffee, and you're coming into that
Okay.
outer section of the daycare.
Sure.
What I don't want is to somebody who's just had their first shot of caffeine to go zipping through
Flying out,
that
yeah.
section as everybody's being dropped off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's, you know, that's something's gonna have to keep that, you know, I don't love speed bumps, but something to sort of.
Rumble strip?
Rumble strip, to just to sort of get them.
So we put the stamped,
Yeah.
as you
Yep.
recall, we put 2 stamp strips on the access drive. But the other thing too is, I think when we were going through the scenarios when we first permitted the original project about the traffic and the flow of vehicles, and it seems to be like it's functioning pretty well.
Well, again, remember, originally, we were talking about an office, which would be not the same thing. I mean, you're talking about people come for an appointment, just sort of rolling in, rolling out.
No, I
Whereas
understand.
this is like, hit your coffee, get moving. I just envision or want to protect against too speedily going through the
Sure.
parking lot that has the daycare. Because, I mean, you think, granted, they're most likely gonna try and drop off at the front. But if they're over there and somebody gets out of their car with the 2 ones that are going into the daycare and the third one who's, you know, you don't know where they went, like you're
Yeah.
trying to grab them, what you don't need is someone zipping through, that's all.
So we've gone through, I don't know how many different renditions of laying this out when, you know, we thought that a concern might be, you know, you get this, well, where's your spill out lane? How can somebody get out? You know, what does that mean? How often does it happen? Do you really need it? Because you don't necessarily have to have an exit out there either.
No, but I like it. I want you to be able to go
Right.
that way. I just want to make sure you keep it at a reasonable pace, that's
So
all.
maybe we could put some signage up that's, you know, to try to get people not to go through there.
Well,
Try
like I
to get them to
said,
use
what
the-
I'm doing
the
is,
main-
I'm mentioning it to you now, so
Yeah,
that
no,
you can start brainstorming
Sure.
about it, not me.
Absolutely.
No, it's
But
come up.
It's something I'm gonna be thinking about when it comes back in, is that's something just to, you know, just to keep people at a reasonable pace going through there. Maybe
no,
not because they're on their best behavior, but because something is making them just sort of keep it at a reasonable pace.
Can you potentially look at altering that so it's not a straight access through? Put a swerve in it?
Well, one of
to-
the problems is that parking lot is already there.
I know.
There's a retaining wall. There's
Yeah.
a lot of infrastructure underneath down there. We
Yeah.
got drainage systems, it's gonna be,
Maybe
yeah.
potentially do it with a, you know, keep the existing, but do it with striping, a potential small aisle, do something, a bump out to move them around if there was anything in that area.
I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to
take a
go
look at
crazy, I
it.
just, you know, just something to keep in mind, because it's something I'm gonna think about when it comes back in. I wanna know how it's gonna work to be sure that we, you know, just kinda keeping things,
We'll look at some signage or the
yeah.
rumble strip.
Like I said, just come in with something, we'll go from there, but I just
Absolutely.
wanna mention it, because something I thought of is that
Okay.
if you do choose to go that way,
Remember, these people,
because you're in a hurry, and
Yes.
that's why you chose to go that way, I don't want you to be in too much of a hurry. That's all.
I can say this, that there is an error on this plan.
Okay.
This is not supposed to be here.
what is it? I just drew something very small and I can't see it.
Cut across.
Yes.
This is just a one-way.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah,
Eliminates the left turn.
Right.
Towards oncoming traffic.
yeah.
Right, so I
That's
corrected
fine.
it on the queuing plan, but we should be trying to get creative on how we
Go
can
this way, it's only this way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
manipulate this area in here, and also try to encourage folks to utilize the main exit out
Right.
with some measures to do that.
Right, that's fine. I mean, again, I know it's the outer part of that parking lot, so it's not the worst part of that parking lot that you have to worry, you know, but is much further up.
It's
Right.
at the door.
Right. So, I'll say I do like that back piece to the restaurant exit where it is. I think things that break up how people are leaving there is better. There's not a ton of space at the in and out off of Andover Street, which I don't think you want the entire parking lot trying to get out just there. I think people leaving that back section and then using the long line of queue up to get out to to 133 is better. I think it does need to, we'll need landscaping to account for the change now of what was there and, putting in, that drive. But I think, again, the access that connects it up with the bank in the back, the one over by the hotel, I think it's all interdependent, because I think it matters that quite a bit of this can stay on site and never have to come out to go in. For people who I think are going to be some of the biggest users of these uses, these restaurants or coffee, whatever it is. The one thing I will say, if you're going to do something with, I know there is the walkway, but I want to make sure that everybody together works to make sure that it's a safe travel between that way back parking lot for those employees coming up, lighted, all that stuff, because I'm thinking now it's the winter months and that's a hike to that back parking lot if that's where you are. And I don't, for, the 8 months of the year when it's dark at 6 o'clock here, I don't want people feeling their way to that back parking lot. That's going to have to be addressed with your agreement with them that, people can get back and forth from those areas safely and,
That was
easily.
our concern. It is well lit now, and we'll make sure that it is continuously.
So, and again, that's your piece where it meets up with their piece. They may already have those things, but, how yours works off that end where that, that curve is probably where they're going to go out if they're going down there.
Sure.
So, want to make sure that those things connect up safely. But other than that, I think, I like the setup. I like the uses, and like I said, I like the way that it's meant to keep a lot of it internal. To keep people off of 133 as much as possible. If for some reason they want to frequent all of these, whether it's the things that exist already, the bank and the ATM or whatever it is, I'd rather see. I think this internal use or setup is very important to making this work. So I'm glad that's there. Otherwise, I think I'm all set. Anything else from anyone?
I have one more question, Mr. Chairman. How many seats do you plan on having in the restaurant?
That's a good question. So, essentially, we end up with 45 parking spaces. So that ends up translating to 120 to 130 seats.
Seats in the
Yeah,
restaurant?
it's kind of set up where there's going to be a restaurant, and then there's going to be a small bar with a little, more lighter fare pizza and stuff eating related to the bar, like a side off of the main restaurant. So that's what we're anticipating. And then the other, I wanted to also mention that stone wall that's currently there now, that'll be continued down along Andover Street. So
I think Mr. Fatali's made me think of something. I know these are renderings and they're not the final product, but it just occurred to me too, because you showed a patio section out there, and I'm also looking at the parking that's directly across from that patio. So when you say stone wall, I'm thinking maybe a stone wall that goes around that patio, or something, something that looks good, again, because this is the kind of stuff that's going to be seen
Sure.
as you go by. I don't want to see, fence and, but that right there is somebody backing up and right across the two tables. You know, that can't happen, obviously. I mean, I'm sure it'll be addressed at some point, but
There
I'll
was
say
a-
it now, that something's gonna have to go there.
That's a good point. When we met with Ed Johnson last week or the week before, he did mention a recently, I don't know if it went through the planning board, but a patio on a restaurant that had to be permitted and had to put bollards up. Well, I think
Right.
bollards are really ugly. They might show a purpose in saving people if a car goes crazy, but they look really ugly, especially a point of emphasis being that patio, and that's facing Andover Street. So we'll incorporate something into the design and make sure that it looks good and
Yeah, I mean,
provides
the
some
stone wall, I
security.
think, is the ideal, I mean, again, even if it's faux
It's
and
faux,
you've got
it's a-
those things hidden inside it,
Yeah.
I don't really care. It's
Well-
just a car from someone who's just left the restaurant can't
Back up and
back
hit
up
everyone.
right
Yeah,
into the
patio.
lap of somebody who's
Yeah.
waiting for their, you know,
It's a good point.
shrimp scampi or something. So,
Just one more comment, Mr. Chairman, if I can, and that's about the back access parking lot. I mean, I don't see anybody that's gonna be coming to this restaurant that's not from Tewksbury using that access road back. If I'm from Tewksbury, maybe I would use that access road, but I don't see the general public exiting that way. If they're coming down 133 to the restaurant, they're gonna be coming in and out of that regular entrance there, I think.
oh, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. What I meant was, I'm hoping that the people in that end of the parking lot will go out, turn right, come up that
Andover
main
Street.
section in the middle to head to Andover Street.
Use that as
Not
a-
to go through the
Okay.
back.
So they're basically going to use that as a common entrance and exit.
Right, and I just feel like those people at that end of the parking lot, if they go out that way, there's all that queue space to get up to Andover.
Yeah.
You know, again, I
I
think,
kind of agree with that too, because if it's a crazy Saturday night and you get there, you pull in off Andover and you can't get a space or it's really busy, you'll be able to get out and you won't have to go back onto Andover Street. You can queue up if 4 or 5 other people leave the restaurant. And it's a huge queue space, so that's what made me go along with it, obviously with the fire department involved as well. And just giving that extra space to egress out of the,
There's one thing, just note, you have that should be 24-foot opening. That's only listed on 20 on the plan, so if you can open that up to match all your existing openings.
Oh, this here?
Yes.
Yeah, so the fire department requires this to be 20.
You wanted 20?
Yeah, it's the minimum width is 20.
Yeah, I'd like to, if you can go to 24. I think if the intent is, Mr. Johnson stated, and Mr. Daly stated, people come in, pull in, if you can't get a spot, it's an access back out. So there may be used a lot. So I think opening up to 24 feet, just standardize it across all of those entrances.
would the board be amenable to 22 potentially,
I
or?
was just gonna say, maybe split the difference.
Split the difference? That's
Yeah,
fine.
because I
If
think
you have- well,
24 creates a real big skirt up there and we really
okay.
kill the.
And then you get into where your swale is in the backside.
20 feet is fine for 2 vehicles.
Okay.
The main purpose of it, when it originally came up, Mr. Ryder, was to provide an egress for a fire truck.
Okay.
So we can show that 2 vehicles
As
can.
long as it meets in the turning radius,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Great.
All right, anything else from anyone? Good, all right, so there you go. Hope
Thank
that
you
helps.
for your time.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item B5, 20 Carter Street bond release. Did I miss one? No. Oh, I'm sorry.
We discussed it so much, we might as well continue. Concept plan. No, I like it.
How good is the food at the restaurant?
Nobody here from Steve?
There should be.
Do we have anybody here for 20 Carter Street? That's unfortunate. I'll ask the board, because I'm not gonna go crazy. Would we like to have someone here to discuss this before
Yes.
we release the bond?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's not just me?
Yes.
All right. So,
You know the answer to that one.
I didn't hear anything about.
okay, so could we reach out to the
Yeah.
applicant who's requesting that their bond be released, and if we could have them come down, we'd be happy to discuss it with them and maybe release the bond, but like, we'd like to have someone here.
Yep.
So we'll leave that one for the next time.
Didn't they go through something here to post the bond, but they're not building it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of questions that would probably like, I'm sure those of us who've already dealt with them would like to at least ask a couple of questions.
What are you doing? Who are you talking to?
Yeah,
So,
you're really.
yeah, if we could ask them to send someone.
Yep, I will do that.
Don't see it.
I'm going to make the same comment, though, because we've had a little bit of trouble with when we've had them. Please send somebody who can answer the questions if we have them and not, it's like the Burger King thing. Like, I know you want to send, please send us someone we can
Yeah.
converse with about this and not just someone to sit in the chair and ask for the bond and then can't answer what we
A
ask.
decision maker.
Yes, please.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so, moving on to agenda item B6, which is 395 Woburn Street landscaping discussion. All right,
Good evening. I'm Jay Tillman with Premier Storage Investors, 530 Oak Court Drive, Suite 185, Memphis, Tennessee.
all right, so the floor is yours.
Sir?
The floor is yours.
Actually, I was invited to come here by Anna McGinty, in case y'all had any questions. This is about the third time that we've showed up to discuss landscaping at the Cube Smart on Woburn Street.
Okay.
I know, I don't want to speak for Anna, but I know that she went and visited the property on Thursday or Friday last week to confirm that we did make all of the landscaping improvements that were part of the original the original site plan approval. And then they encouraged us to add additional landscaping in a couple of spots and clean up some areas, which we did as well. So,
All right, so I think before we start, I'll let Anna, if you just want to give your 2 cents.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chairman. So, yep, I went and visited the site on Thursday last week and verified the recent landscaping that was put in per the planning board on May 13th, when you last spoke about the site. And I took several photos, which is included in your packets. And my evaluation is that it meets the landscaping that was requested by the board at the May 13th meeting. And I did meet with Phil
Phil Lachado.
and he walked with the site with me, so,
Okay.
yep.
All right, very good. All right, we'll start with Mr. Ryder.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Anna, for taking the time to go out to visit. I think trees look great. I think they've met all of the things that we've asked to this point. With the cleaning up the site, I went by, it all looks good, trees, so I'm happy with what has been done. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fowler?
Well, I guess I could go on and on and on, but I'm very pleased with the site, and I'm very pleased with someone such as yourself who has to travel to come up here to discuss things with us, that you're able to get it done expeditiously,
Thank you, sir.
because that's not normally the case. If someone's from some other company is down in Texas, well, we can't get up there, you know. Anyway, I want to thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. I'm also anxious to get open, as Anna can tell you. I came to Town Hall today to meet with Anna, and then I went over to Public Works to meet with the engineer, Mr. Kevin Hardeman and Randy Burrell, and we're doing everything that we can to finish dotting the i's and cross the t's so that we can open for business. So,
Good.
and I do know that this site plan approval is one of the things that actually I believe Inspector Commissioner Johnson is looking that we have completed things to your satisfaction. I think that's one of the conditions that he's looking to see before he issues our certificate of occupancy.
Yep. Mr. Delaney?
I'm all set.
Mr. Fasali?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, is this gentleman, Mr. Prower, does he have an issue with us not doing something?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So initially, I spoke with Earl Blatchford, and if you look at your first picture on the fencing on the north side, the trees were just put in that clumping area. And I spoke with him and clarified that on May 13th, the board, there was a discussion of putting the trees all along the north side. And so then I had that discussion with Earl after I got that complaint from Adam Prower about, he had that question about the trees. So then those subsequent trees down that row was put in after I received his
Okay,
complaint.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, hopefully it'll solve the problem that they were complaining about as far as the blocking some of that from their side, you know, so, but it looks great. When do you expect to be open? Just curious.
Sir, I wish I was open already.
I actually thought you were.
No, it's the building that, we've just had some tough luck. It took a long time to get National Grid to get us permanent power. That slowed us down considerably. And now that, as soon as we got permanent power, we rolled right into inspections, closeout inspections. Our building has been completed for a long period of time.
So what is the holdup then? Just curious.
I think it had a lot to do with the gas strike, and then the power people were pulled in different directions to cover.
Okay.
Just really emergency services, not really anything towards development. So it was an unusual experience for us.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. So when are we going to be open? Just weeks, months?
Within a week or two.
Oh, good, great.
I would like to be open next week, but I don't want to put that much pressure under Inspector Johnson, Commissioner Johnson.
He lives to that.
He was here tonight, you know that,
I
right?
saw him in the background.
So
But
good.
I also know I've got some I's to dot and T's to cross before I can bug him, you know.
Yeah, good. Well, we look forward to being open. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
sir.
I'm all set with Jim.
All right, yep, I'm all set. Again, I appreciate the effort to try to address the concerns. To whatever degree our satisfaction with the landscaping is holding you up, I think at this point that if need be, I'll poll the board. Is the board's feeling that the landscaping in its present state meets the requirements that we've set out, and probably then some? Is that the feeling of the board?
Absolutely. We could motion.
Yeah, that's fine, I'll take
We
a,
could motion that Anna could draft a letter, put in the file, so this gentleman could have it, that part of the permit process is acceptable.
That would be very appreciated.
okay, so we'll take a motion. So I have a motion, do I have a second? Motion made and seconded, all those in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries, so we'll take care of that, that way, that's one thing you can check off your list. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, moving on to agenda item B7, 255 Salem Road, Border Road A&R Plan. Now, my understanding is this one, we got a letter in that we wouldn't be able to attend this evening, provided no one has any issues with the A&R plan. Obviously, it either is or it isn't, so I'll just run around the board. Mr. Ryder?
I didn't have anything.
Mr. Fowler?
All set?
Mr. Delaney?
Also,
Mr. Vitalia?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
The chair is all set as well, so seeing that, what is the pleasure of the board on endorsing the A&R plan as submitted?
Motion to endorse the plan.
All right, a motion made and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. I believe we have it here, so
Okay.
grab that before we leave.
Good.
Moving on to agenda item C, 250 Cardigan Road, Family Suite Special Permit. I have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Nope,
Oh, you-
nope, that was housekeeping. Could you just state your name for the record? The floor is yours.
Katie McSheehy?
Just move your mic, there you go. All right, so if you want to give a little background on what you're doing, and then I'll bring it up to the board.
Yes, it's my in-laws' house. Currently, they live there with their daughter, her husband, and their 4 children. So they're adding the family suite on so that the parents can take the family suite, and then Erin will continue to live there with her family and kids.
All right. We'll start with Mr. Fowler.
I'm very, nice to see a well-documented plan. Even though it's not by an architect, it doesn't have to be. As long as you can use a ruler and know how to measure and you know what you want to do. The only question I have is, And John can answer this probably for the building inspector. It's supposed to be outside dimensions, and it appears, I'm not sure if it is in all cases. In other words, if it's a 30 by 24 building, it shouldn't be 30 feet on the inside. It should be 30 feet on the outside. And I'm not sure if that's the case here. Just might be how it was drawn. So not being
Not my
critical,
fault.
just saying, because it could give a difference of about 100 square feet. So that's all. So maybe you, Donna, if you could check that.
Yeah, it has to be the outside wall, so just make sure that the square footage is the outside walls, not the inside.
Right. That's all. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
I'm looking for where the door is to go from the in-law to the existing house. And I want to know how they get out. I don't see the front door. I don't see the front door. Did I miss something?
I don't think they're showing it here because they're only showing the in-law, not the main portion.
Okay.
The access is through the garage.
It's getting attached to a split, if that helps.
I don't know if we've never said one way or the other that's really, whether it's necessary. Usually a lot of times we get both pieces, but we don't really have a rule.
It's just the addition, it's
Yeah,
not
they're
the
just showing
house
the
and the
addition, that's
addition
why.
Right.
I
orientation.
understand. But do they know that they have to have an access door from one place to another?
Correct.
Okay, and the door in the front, you can only have one. In other words, you don't have a door that goes into the in-law and a door that goes into the regular house.
I think there'll be a door on the side. They'll have a second egress, but it's not on the front.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the front door. There's a door on the side, and then there's a door in the front. And you have to have access from the in-law to the existing house and use one door in the front.
Right. That's going to be like that, I believe.
Okay, but I didn't,
So
I
basically.
know it's gonna be like that when the
Dining room.
building inspector gets a hold of
In
it.
the dining room, Mr. Delaney.
In the dining room. Okay.
To the right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Honestly, a lot of times when we get these plans, they're showing the existing and the in-law.
Okay.
So it's easier for us to see where the
Where they
in-law
connect and
attaches to the existing.
Okay.
And that it's only showing the one front door. Because you only have one front door, because there's only one address.
Yes.
So basically, that's all.
Okay.
Mr. Delaney doesn't see it here because it's not provided.
Yeah.
It's just telling you, you have to have, that's how it has to be, so hopefully it is,
Yeah.
because otherwise, you're not gonna get any further than us.
Yeah.
Well, the thing-
Because when you get to the building department, it's gonna come to a screeching halt.
I'm sure I'm looking at it, and I didn't see the doors, but I'm sure the building inspector is gonna pick up on it right away.
Right, yeah, so,
So I don't have a problem with what we've got.
very good. Anything, is that good?
I'm good.
Mr. Vitale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. McSheehy on Sunday at his home as I went out to the property, and God bless him, living with his wife, his daughter-in-law and son, and the 4 children in that home, and this is a welcome addition, I'm sure, for you, having the in-law on the side. So I have no problem with that, with the idea and the concept of the family suite. It's a great, keeping the family together and helping out whatever way you can. So I had one question. I know you told me this building access is going to be on the side, which you told me, which would not have 2 front entrances, which is good. The other question I have is it on sewer?
They are now.
Sewer now? Good, okay, that's just one of the requirements. Other than that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Ryder?
No, I think, everything's here. The only thing is, Mr. Fowler stated outside dimensions. Other than that, I think everything is, fits, and they'll go on to the building inspector, and anything he's gonna find, well,
So that's usually my last part, because these, we encourage these, we want these, we do whatever we can to accommodate when they're brought in, but we're only one step in the process, and we can only go with what's in front of us. And if it turns out that any of the numbers aren't quite right, when you get to the building inspector, He's the final say on this. He's the one who's going to issue the building permit, so provided what's in front of us is accurate, you know, we have no problem with it, and we encourage it, but obviously, you know, your numbers got to work when they get to the building inspector, so we're just telling you can. He's going to tell you if you will. So, with that, I will open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, a motion to approve.
We're going to close.
I'm sorry?
Close
Close
first.
the public hearing.
I close the public hearing.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As
Motion
to
to approve.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the family suite special permit as submitted.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those all those opposed? Motion carries. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Congrats.
All right, that brings us to agenda item D, 1420 Andover Street, continued special permit and definitive subdivision. While we're waiting for everybody to get settled, I would like to note the appreciation to Mr. Fratalia, because you are like the board's outreach to all, like you've been everywhere, you're in people's backyards, I love it.
I happen to go out to I happen to do my due diligence.
No,
out to
I am not in any way, I don't
Cardigan
even mean to
Road.
be, I'm not being in any way sarcastic, I really do appreciate it, because you have like a hands-on more often than anyone else on here with these things when they come in, like you've literally been everywhere.
Well,
It's
he's got that-
impressive.
Well, it's
Are there any cars in the
I'll
yard?
give you another funny story. When I pulled up to the house, he came out because he thought I was going to buy his car that was on sale on Craigslist. I'm like, no, I'm not here for the car. I'm a planning board member, just looking at the plan coming up, and
We're gonna get Mr. Fratalia like a little plastic planning board badge.
Yeah, we're gonna get you a badge.
Keep from getting run off a property. All right, with that, let's, if you guys just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering, 10 George Street, Lowell.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman, David Plunkett for the applicant. Mr. Hammer is the project engineer, and also in the audience, we have Frank Gorman from Southern Realty, who is the owner and developer of the project. Mr. Chairman, there was a submittal of revised plans a few weeks ago, and Mr. Hammer did receive on Friday comments from the town, and he has provided responses today to the town, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Hammer to just review his comments and, you know, the status of the plan at this time, and then, you know, any questions that you have at that point.
All right.
I apologize for the late response. I received comments on Friday afternoon, and just didn't have ample time to put everything together, spit it back to planning, talk to the town engineer.
You had to go to a wedding Saturday, right?
Yeah, lacrosse and whatnot. But I'm going to walk through, I know it's been probably 2 months, I think, since we first presented to the board. And at that time, there were a few things. One is we went to conservation, and during conservation, they were generally pleased with the treatment of the roadway, the runoff that's currently not being treated before it gets to this wetland area here. There is a stone wall that separates the project from the wetland. They like the fact that this is all being treated now along this drive. We're also removing this existing building. I know that came up with planning, but it also was mentioned at the Conservation Commission. So it removed a structure further away from the wetlands than what was previously there now. We're going to have these 2 new dwellings here, and each of which will have their own separate infiltration system for drainage. And we've made modifications to the detention basin areas and the runoff for the drainage of the roadway. If you'll notice in the comments that came out on Friday, there wasn't anything specific in those comments related to anything related to the drainage being insufficient to the town engineer's review, which was great. We brought in this turnaround just a little bit, so we now have just a little bit broader area for the emergency turnaround, which is, I know, something that the fire department wanted. The other thing is that in here, instead of these being the parking spaces for the house, we're removing those. That's going to be now an emergency turnoff area, just in case when you're coming out, if someone's coming in and there is a conflict, there is a place for you to get off the roadway. But we're also going to restore this area here and vegetate that for the conservation so that their 25-foot no disturb is still relevant to the project in terms of something that was already there. We're going to vegetate that area in the no disturb. We also pulled the drainage away from the wetland so that it is not in that 25-foot no disturb. So that was something the conservation also liked related to that. Having taken these spaces away, we now have this new configuration, which I know the board hasn't seen, which is an area here where this curb, where this drive will come off of this here and come out to a turnaround area in front of the building that's there now. I know one of the comments was that the town engineer thought that this drive was too close to the roadway here. And in my response to that is we did look at that, okay? This happened to work out nicely with the grading that we had, but it should be noted that from where this comes out, there's 45 feet between that point and the road. So that's enough for 2 vehicles. Because a typical vehicle distance away, like when we just showed you the queuing for the drive-through, it wants to be, we design around 22 feet for that. So we have 45. So there can be 2 vehicles sitting here, plus if you're coming out of the drive and you see 2 vehicles, you can just sit there in your drive and wait for someone to go out onto Andover Street, and the next car moves up and then you can come down. But we're only 3 total homes here, so we're not anticipating that that's going to be an event that would necessitate us moving this drive. So I just wanted to make that point to the board. The other comments that came up was during the meeting was the style of the homes. Mr. Gorman with Southern End Realty, here's an example of an elevation, built some nice homes. He's built at least 5 homes that I know of up at the Four Oaks Country Club development. This is an example of one of 4 style homes that are colonial looking with a
Thank you.
garage, 2-car garages. I know that the board had some interest in the style of homes that were going to be constructed. You can also, I only have 1 copy of this, but this is an example of 4 of the different styles of homes that the developer's built up at the Four Oaks Country Club. He has I don't know, I've done probably 50 homes for Mr. Gorman, and he does a really nice job. It's a family business. Him and his boys, they build the homes. So it's that, you know, you're gonna find that these are gonna be quality homes, so they don't detract to the homes that are in the neighboring area. I know that was a concern from the abutters as well. We've had discussions with the abutters after the meeting, just asking them if there's anything that was on their mind since that first meeting. I know there was some concern at one point about, you know, some of these existing walls, we're going to take all those out. As you can see, there's a large vegetative buffer between the actual homes and homes on Sawyer's Lane. There was some discussion about this easement that actually extended off the end of Sawyer's Lane. I don't know if the board recalls the talk of the easement. The easement itself actually goes down to the town's land. We don't know, you know, what it was necessitated for, but it doesn't have any effect to this property at all. There will be a homeowners association, you know, document that will get created for the maintenance of the road, all of the utilities, and everything related to the maintenance of this common drive. There was a comment by the engineer related, there's a regulation that says that when the drive comes off and meets the street, they do not want it in the projection of this lot next to it, an adjacent lot. And the reason for that is that you don't want to prohibit a driveway being able to come out and then have someone else's driveway curb return in your way. But because this existing house is going to be part of this homeowners association and is locked in with this plan and this drive connecting to this roadway, they will not be able to do a curb cut here, and we can put that in as a restriction. Because if we recall, back on the East Street project, Mr. Ryder had suggested that we widen this entrance here so that there was more room for someone to come in and come out. But with that, you get this rounding problem here. And we're not trying to push this way. This drive is actually cheated to this side where it is now. So that's the reason why this actually is in that projection.
Okay.
One of the other comments was the angle of the right-of-way in the drive to the intersection of Andover Street. It cannot be less than 60%. I think there was a little confusion, and I'll tell you what it is now. If you take a line and project it out like this, it is less than 60 to the center line of Andover Street, to the center line of the projection of the drive. But the way this is configured is when you come to the end here, you actually turn and you now get yourself approximately 78 degrees because you're now more perpendicular to the actual drive lane of Andover Street. So the car is not pointing at an angle. The drive is not pointing at an angle. They actually have enough room to straighten themselves out so that that's what you want to be able to do, is look in both directions and not be at an angle. That was one of the comments that came in from the engineer, but I'm just letting everyone know that this is actually almost perpendicular. It's 78 degrees. And we acknowledge all the typical construction permits that are necessary for trench, physical alteration, sewer modification, water connection, land disturbance. And you know, there was a couple comments. They wanted some clarification on the exact configuration of the connections to the sewer manhole. We feel as though that can be facilitated administratively with the engineering department related to the details of connecting to a sewer manhole. There was a comment saying that the infiltration systems did not have an observation port. We do have observation ports on it just may not have been clear to them, but they get put on all subsurface infiltration systems now as a regular device for maintaining the systems, and that's actually mentioned in our stormwater management operation and maintenance plan and the drainage report as well. One of the questions came up about site distance to the roadway. So we had shot the site distance, and the site distance requirement for this roadway for 35 mile an hour is 250 linear feet in either direction. Site distances are added to the plan. On the layout sheet. But then if you go actually out to Andover Street, what happens when you're coming north, or south, excuse me? Am I oriented? Yeah, is it, or is it east? When you're coming on Andover Street, it's 35. You start to see some signage that's talking about the school. So you have these other roadways here, Bennett, and is it Meriden?
Sheridan.
Sheridan, excuse me. You start to see 20, now you get to react and go 25 mile an hour, because now you're getting into the school district, which, you know, during the school times, it's 20. And you're going up a hill. So your first inclination coming this way is to slow down, because you now know you're getting into a more congested area. You're actually on an incline, and you're about to hit a speed limit sign that's going to say go down to 25. So we feel as though that the site distance, even though it meets AASHTO requirements, which would be 250, we're at 291. With the configuration of what actually is out there related to the uses that are going to be, once you start to get to this point, you know you need to start to slow down. You're not gaining speed like you would going the other way. Like when you're going the other way, you're going 25, 30, 35 miles an hour, and then you're like, okay, now I get a straight shot, you know, heading towards Lowell, where it's just 35 the whole way till you get to the plaza. When you start to head towards Lowell there, where the bank and the pizza shop is down there. I don't know what the name of that intersection is, but this area in here is, as we all know, 35, 45 miles an hour through here. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but when you come in the other way, you know you got to start to slow down. So we feel as though that the site distance is adequate for this intersection. So hopefully that answers some of those questions that came up at that last meeting. And I think that's it. I can put it to the board and answer any questions.
And, Mr. Chairman, just also to try to put this in context also, we shouldn't forget that we're adding one additional residence. You know, there's an existing home, there is the structure in the back that was utilized as a residential use. So you're taking a site that had combined two residential uses at a point in time, and now it's an addition of one. The layout in the context of what is being proposed here is very similar to multiple types of developments in the town. Even right on that stretch, you have Bennett Way and you have Plunkett Way. And I have some familiarity with Plunkett Way. But in terms of, what it did, it, creates a private way. It allows for the build out of houses, residential development, and in those cases, the same as it's going to be in this case here. It's going to be a very nice improvement. It's going to be something that will be a benefit to the developer in terms of the type of development that has been presented to you today. as to what is envisioned there, and also to the neighborhood, that I don't know if one of the abutters who lived on Bennett Way came up to me afterwards, and she was very enthusiastic about it, because she says she lives on Bennett Way and she looks over at this site here, and she is thrilled with the thought that you're going to have nice new residential structures that will be an improvement to what she's looking at and improve the area. And I think also that the fact that they have gone with the raising of that back structure and building a new structure is certainly, again, addresses some of the questions and concerns at the last meeting with some of the abutters in terms of, okay, what's that going to look like? How far is that from the property line? So you're not only dealing with what Mr. Hammer referred to, that the Concom was happy about pulling that away from wetlands, but it also pulls it away from other residences at the Sawyer Lane area. So it's a benefit to that there. You know, in terms of the waivers, there was a question in the engineers of the town's report to about the waivers, and Mr. Hammer referred to it in his letter, that if you look at the waivers, they're the exact waivers that we do for every build out of this sort. And again, that's a benefit to the town. Numerous reasons: that it reduces the impervious surface, it creates a private way that's going to be handled by the homeowners, and takes the burden off of the town to maintain and plow and deal with another roadway. So, you know, with that said, I think that with the letter that was presented by Mr. Hammer today, that really any of the loose ends, so to speak, that could be addressed, you know, after the fact, just by providing the town engineer with what he's looking for in terms of verification of certain aspects of that were the focus point of his questions. So, you know, I think it would be a benefit for the town. It would be a great improvement of this parcel of land, and it's very much in keeping with numerous similar developments like that, with two right in the immediate area as a reference point.
All right. Mr. Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the developers' pictures that came in. They look very nice, and hopefully they'll be what's there in the future. I guess one of my questions I have is, if you allow for an access area to divert in case a car is coming in, but what happens if it occurs farther down that road? So you have the cutout there for...
Yeah. The nice thing about this drive is you can see down the road, right? So if you're coming down here and you see somebody, you can just wait here. And conversely, you could do it here. There's a little pull-off area here. There's going to be a little one here.
What I'm saying is, what happens if it occurs 15 feet down from that cutout area? And you got two cars coming in together, who's going to give...
That's the thing about a common driveway is they just got to wait. They got to wait here. They got to back up if need be, and that's what you get when you're
no room to actually widen that road at all, or? I don't recall the last plan you had.
We're a little stuck in that regard because we get this 25-foot no disturb that the Conservation Commission, rightly so, wants to adamantly hold that as a requirement to stay away from, and we've designed around that. And then also we're trying to meet stormwater compliance to the extent practicable, which in this case is meeting full stormwater compliance for this, with the treatment and the drainage swales and the detention basin. So there's a net benefit to having what some would call a low impact development style roadway. But the nice thing is that these folks, when they're coming out, they can see down. And if they see someone coming in, they're gonna wait, and they're gonna do whatever's necessary, and more than likely they might be one of their own family members doing that.
So how wide is that roadway, just again?
This roadway is 12 feet.
So that's one of your waivers you're requesting, is that correct?
Yes.
From 24 to 12?
Yes, and that's just like East Street, it's the same way.
Okay. I do have to tell you, I'm not too happy receiving this 3-page document tonight, because you can appreciate, we don't have time to look at this tonight
And Mr.
prior to
Fattalia,
prior to your
when I-
presentation, so.
So I'd like to note that, a couple weeks ago, I was asking for comments as well. And I got comments at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, so I was,
I understand, and I can understand your concern as well, but it does nothing for us to be able to read this tonight, so.
it's unfortunate, and I wish it could be different.
Me too, so, all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Delaney.
I guess, I'm okay with all of it. The only thing is, that's one long road. Where are you gonna put the snow? As long as you don't put it to the left side of the road,
Off to either side.
off to either side, you have
Yep.
plenty of room for the snow,
Well, more than enough, yes.
okay?
Yep.
Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. Ideally, I would like to see, as Mr. Fattalia stated, I do like you have the bump out there for access. Now, what's the reason you couldn't bring the road wider towards the properties? I mean, I understand you get your 25-foot buffer for the wetlands, opening it up just past the existing single-family home and opening it up down towards the first parcel.
We're just using the same design standard that we used recently on East Street.
East Street's
yes.
a little, much shorter.
Yeah, it's a couple hundred feet shorter.
Couple hundred feet shorter. When you get this far,
Yep. We could widen the roadway.
okay.
We could widen the roadway on this side. There is some utility poles that are just enough away we could get 2 feet out of it.
Okay.
So it's not out of the question.
Well, I'm just looking, if whatever you have, somebody entertains for whatever reason. Now you have any one of these parties, somebody has a cookout. You're landlocked. You have minimal access in there. So if any one of these have 6 or 8 people over their house for a cookout, you have no access down if it's the first house or the second house. You
Yeah, so
potentially
we could widen it to 14 feet.
Okay. And it still would give you, if you even parked off the edge of the grass, you would still have access to get by that.
Yeah, you can. It is
What's
relatively
the
flat
slope?
through the...
What's the grade there?
It's not bad, actually.
It's not bad?
You can pull off onto a shoulder.
Okay.
To do what you're saying on that,
Okay,
so...
and I do like, as you stated, you gave the 45-foot of queuing for that
Yeah.
first driveway out, and it gives the ability to fix the geometry of the
Yeah.
vehicles entering and exiting. That was a concern on the original
Yep.
plans. But that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like everything I've seen so far on this, with the addition of what Mr. Ryder has suggested on widening the road. I have not, and I'll just give this as a caveat, Mr. Plunkett said that a couple of times. I might say a couple of things about Mr. Plunkett during this meeting. It's kind of fun.
Send me on the other side.
Yeah, right. Anyway, David, no, I appreciate what you've done. The caveat is if you don't think it's necessary between your thoughts and the board's to go the entire distance, if you just have an area where you might want to
Yeah, we could do a bump
have
out.
a bump out
That's what I
or a couple of
just
places,
suggested,
and I've seen that.
yeah.
Whatever you think is right will work. If the
Sure.
ground is stable enough that you can do it, then do it.
Because, Mr. Fowler, typically the homeowners association, their rules and regulations would be that no one could park you're not supposed to park in the roadway, so.
Fine.
We all know how those rules and
Yeah.
regulations
Yeah,
are.
right.
That becomes a problem for them
Now
to deal
that
with.
becomes a problem, ultimately where they're gonna park at that
In the
point.
driveway.
And you say, I think the good thing here is that there is some pretty decent, though, access, the driveway access to the, oh, I'm sorry. I almost had a.
Need the laser point to see.
Workman's comp, right?
I can say this, though, related to what you're about to say, sorry for interrupting you. But the drives are long coming up into the driveway, so there is some there that they can just deal with, so there is some additional areas here. But there's gonna be some signage that no one can park in that turn.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead. Just one.
Yep.
No, that was the point in terms of the terms and conditions of the homeowners association would be such that that common drive
Yep.
area is not to be used for parking. And what Mr. Hammer just pointed out, I'm not going
Yeah,
to
don't
point
poke me in
over
the
that
neck.
way again, that the benefit of this layout is that there is some fairly decent parking locations for the two houses at the end.
I have one other thing, and this is nothing to do with your site, but it only proves what we did on the planning board years ago when Sheridan Lane was put in. We had the state widen that curve, which used to be called Martin's Curve.
Yeah.
And a little history lesson here, right, David?
I grew up on.
That's right,
Yeah.
absolutely. But somewhere down the road, when they hot topped it, there was a left turn, I'm sorry, back up. There was a left turn markings on Andover Street, so you could stop to get into Sheridan Lane without someone rear-ending you coming down the hill.
No.
It was there for years. It disappeared. So I would hope, wanted to ask Mr. Crappen if he could look into that, and I still might.
So actually, we're on the end, we had this conversation, where's the state part stop? Are we in the state part at this point?
It doesn't, state part doesn't
So
take
this is
place
us again.
until
So-
actually just by International Drive. That was the
That's-
original issue.
Well, that's
with-
what my point was, so this is actually an us thing.
This is a town.
That's,
We can ask internally that question.
well, I will.
You know what I mean? Like,
I will.
we might be easier to put back than you think.
That's right.
So,
We'll take care of it. Thank you, David.
All right, anytime.
All set.
all right.
Yep.
So, again, I like this configuration in terms of the portion out towards the street. As we discussed at a meeting some time ago, obviously, there could have been two driveways here, which I don't think serves anybody's purpose, to not try and consolidate these. I think, obviously, that understanding from the front house that will be, needs to be in writing, that's it. They don't now have an ability to put a driveway in off the main road. That restriction is gonna, it's imperative that that's the case now, but it does provide a benefit in that I don't think it serves anybody's purpose to actually have two driveways there in that spot on Andover Street and that close together.
Right.
Which I don't think, it would have solved a problem if we made it a problem, but I don't know why we'd want that. So I think this is much better. I do agree that, there's always that trade-off. You prefer to keep as little driveway as you can, but at the same time, we are talking about a fairly long stretch here. I think a little bit of extra space, I think, is gonna go a long way for folks. We are only talking about two houses, but people have friends, things happen. It would be best to, be proactive and avoid a problem than, pretend one might not happen. So I'm sort of on board with the, if we can go a little bit wider and make a little more space on the driveway, I think it would be best. Otherwise, again, as Mr. Fratelli said, we have this tonight, so I guess my question would be, of the comments you received, as I thumbed through it, are there any that you did not agree with in the list? That
Yes,
you're
there
still
were.
trying to?
The one that I didn't, there were two that I didn't agree with.
Okay.
One was the curb return coming out.
This is the 60-degree or?
No, in front of the frontage.
Okay.
If you do a line projection of the frontage, you're not supposed to have this. And I was saying that because this frontage is inclusive of this entire project, we have control over that. In my understanding, in the practice of what we would design around it would be, because you don't want to prevent someone from putting a driveway over where they're using their driveway, but they're not able to do that here. The second one it's a geometry, it's an interpretation of geometry of roadways. So you don't want a roadway coming into an existing roadway at less than 60 degrees, because obviously it's harder to look to the left if you're at a 60-degree angle to the roadway. What I'm saying is that from here to here, it's almost 90, in fact, it's 78, okay? But it's well over the 60 because the car's not pointing like this, it's pointing like this, because we widened that entrance.
Square.
I know, you may not have background to necessarily understand that geometry, but I can tell you that that's what that requirement is for.
Right. So one of the reasons I asked that is because as we've discussed and we've had at this point, we're pretty much at a point now where we're not doing the, we'll pass something and then you guys sort it out later with the engineer. We've sort of been asked that we don't do that anymore. So one way or the other, we're either making a decision on an item or we leave it to get, a further answer from the town engineer. But we're not doing we approve it subject tos any longer. So that's why I just wanted, so out of this list, the only two left are those two, one of which the solution is meant to be the restriction on the existing house that they cannot put in a driveway.
Right.
Which would alleviate, again, if you go with it, you alleviate the problem that placement would have created. And then the second one would be a determination is when that turn happens, is the radius sufficient that exists now with the curve, the 78 that you're talking about?
It's the angle of the vehicle, just the
Where
angle.
they're actually facing versus the way the road
It's the angle of
faces.
the roadway to the roadway you're coming into. So you know how like some of the older roads you're on, you're at
Right.
you're at like a 50 or a 60-degree angle, and you don't have enough time to get your car straightened out because there's no room to do that. A lot of the older roads, you do have that situation, but what I'm trying to say is we don't have that situation here because, like I've said, plus we're not a public road here either, okay? This is a private common driveway, but when you're coming in your car, when you get to the pavement, which is here, you're straightened out. You're not coming in at an angle, and I know that's the requirement. It's always been a requirement for geometry of roadways in all the towns to not be less than that 60 degrees. But what I'm trying to say is the actual drive is 78 to 90 degrees because you have the ability to straighten yourself out.
If you went with the other geometry, what does it come out to? We have the disagreement. What does he think it's at?
He says it's less than 60.
Do you know how much less? That's what I'm asking. Like, is it 59?
When I did his projection,
You know what I mean? I'm saying.
when I did his projection,
Yeah.
what he's interpreting, what I believe he's interpreting it came out to 57. And that's if you take this line and you come out here and you're at this road, this angle right here is 57.
So I guess I was trying to get is how drastic of a difference would it be even if you used his geometry?
It's 3 degrees.
3 degrees, okay.
But the point is we're not designing a roadway that's carrying public day in and day out to access an existing intersection. What I'm trying to say is that we're a private drive, little used, not that that's any reason not to meet the 60%, but you're straightened out when your vehicle's at the edge of the pavement.
And also, Mr. Chairman, when you look at the fact that the driveway, as it exists, already could service 2 houses anyway, so you're adding a single house, and certainly when you look at the layout and proposed development is going to be a significant improvement over what's serving that parcel now. And especially when you take into effect Mr. Hammer's analysis that it does meet the requirement if you approach it the way that he's approaching. But in any event, even the worst-case scenario of that 3-degree differential, it's still a significant improvement over a driveway that exists there now and will continue to be a private way, not a public way.
I guess, I mean, your answers, it might be directed at other, if I was giving the impression that I wasn't already okay with it,
Okay.
that wasn't my intention. I was just trying to get a number, like, so I think I'm okay with it, but that's only me. I don't know about the other members, but I think your explanation is satisfactory to me. I was just curious, if you use the other one, how different it was, and the 3 degrees as opposed to 20 degrees. I was just curious how much it was off.
Right.
So, all right, that's it from me. Any other?
A couple of questions, actually, I forgot, if I could. How many feet would you estimate between the existing building that's there now and the new development building?
We don't like to estimate.
Okay.
This building to this building?
No, from the rear building to the second building.
From here to-
So,
Yeah.
what's it? So from the existing building in the rear to the single-family dwelling that's to the end of, yeah, right there.
50
Exactly.
feet. Originally it was 75, Vinnie, now it's 125 to the rear corner.
Okay.
You had 75 feet from the existing dwelling to the property line of the Downs property, and now your proposed is 125 feet to the back corner from their property.
Okay. All right. That was one question. Another one I had is, that's fine, just trying to get an idea how far it was from the existing.
Point, we are moving the house further away from this
Right. So
residential.
is there any need for any additional tree lining in the back?
I can say
to
that-
prov- to,
What is not clear on this plan is that this is, that's the existing tree line,
Okay.
right?
See the tree line real clear.
Yeah. But this is the existing tree line.
Okay.
Right here. So we're not taking down any more trees there. We're just taking a little bit of trees in here to get them away from the house.
Okay, that's fine, good. And my last question is, have you allocated any spot for postal service to come in and deliver their mail to the project?
I have not. I've been getting the emails from Ms. McGinty about the mailbox location, so it'll fully comply with that document that I know the Postal Service is requiring the town of Tewksbury.
Just to bring you aware of it, that's all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So with that, I'll throw it out to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Just state your name and your address. The floor
Mike
is
Downs,
yours.
10 Sawyer's Lane.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Excuse me?
One more time?
Mike Downs, 10 Sawyer's Lane. I'm the direct abutter.
Thank you.
I guess my question's more of a clarification on the vegetation that's currently here. So it's staying as it is?
That's what we're proposing right now.
Okay, so on the property line, would you be open to possibly putting evergreens or something to have a good block?
There's a hope, I think it's all trees now.
So that, there's trees of some type, a lot of it's kind of scrub trees and things like that. Yeah.
I know that evergreens are gonna need full sun for them to, to really flourish, so.
Or something there? Okay. And also on the easement, you said that's not part of your project.
It's off of, it's not on our
It's
property.
not on your property, correct. So there'll be no claim to that easement, or documented, that there could be no claim in the future?
Not for us.
Would that be documented, I'm asking?
It's my understanding from looking at the easement that it was put in order to provide an easement down to the city, the town property. Why and whether anyone even uses it, I don't know. The best I can tell is maybe it was an easement provided as a requirement to approve Sawyer's Lane in order to have access to the town property. And it's just a foot, I think it was only 10 feet.
There's some, yeah, fairly.
Yeah, so those typically are just for possibly connecting a trail.
Okay, but in the future, you're going to have an abutter here who may try to utilize that. Can it be noted that there's no claim to that easement? That's my question.
I don't think I can have them disclaim an easement they don't have on their land. If it doesn't occur on their land, they don't have it, so they can't say they can't use it. If it, you know what I mean? If it's on some other piece of property, that's the only person.
But it stated the abutters
The easement, do you?
would have access as a past wayers.
I think that they may have
Something.
access, but it's an easement, it's the town of Tewksbury's access. It's a town of Tewksbury easement to obtain access to the parcel, so.
So out here. Is that what we're
Ultimately,
saying?
it's an easement for the town, it's not an easement for the parcel.
It's not for us.
It's not for, it's the town's easement, so they'll,
town's
basically, the town has access for whatever reason to gain access to the property. It's not for, maybe for an abutter as well, based upon the town has to get in there, but they wouldn't be able to claim to say, okay, it's our easement, it's provided for the town.
Okay. And
The
you,
way I looked at it, so.
okay, thank you. And you stated the distance from this house to the property line was what? Or to the home?
On the plans, it states 125 feet to the back corner, and the existing parcel is 75 feet to the back corner.
All right, that's it, thank you.
All right, anyone else with any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Any further questions from anyone on the board this time? All right, what is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the hearing.
All right, have a motion to close the hearing? Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chairman, before just want to make certain that the waivers as listed will be part of the, we will need those waivers in order to.
All right, you know what, let's just do this back up one step, just because we're gonna do this the way we talked about it before. So, before we close it, because I haven't taken the vote on it yet, so, before we close it, the members are okay with the waivers as requested?
Correct.
I mean, we'll do that as a motion in a second, but I just want to make sure before we close it and can't discuss it any further. All right, and then,
One of the waivers is the reduction
Pavement.
of the pavement from 24
We're
to
changing
12.
that, so. we
that's
have
right,
to
so that's the, was that number one?
That's number one.
Okay.
Number one.
So they're broken up in one of the letters here is 2 through 7 and 1 separately. So why don't we can treat them like that when we do the motion? Right, but that's the one that's what we'll do with the, because the waiver's gonna need it no matter what size we make it. We're still gonna need the waiver, but we'll have to set the number. So we'll figure that out now before we close it and start voting on it. So the waiver, I mean, the distance, the space, I'm sorry, the width of the road, we need to decide what number we want that to be.
I think that has to be determined by the toe of the slope. I don't know what they can, that was the, we can't vote on that until they can tell us what he can get there. And that's the concern about,
We can get the 14 feet.
you can get 14 feet there?
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see Mr. Hardeman have some input on here to make sure he's all set with what he has suggested too. I mean, before we
The
leave
only thing
something
with that
wide
is,
open.
I don't want to run this back through for the two things that are left. They're not they're not contradicting any of the other any of the other issues in here. That's why I had them run through the two that are left, which are, and you're free to be not okay with that geometry on the exit if you don't believe their version and don't think 57's enough. And then the other one is the requirement for the restriction that the existing house on the second lot, first lot, however we're calling it, cannot in the future build a driveway. Because those are only a problem if you don't if you're not okay with the explanation we received.
I thought we were gonna try to avoid leaving any open ends.
They won't be, that's what I'm saying. We're making that determination now.
Okay.
It won't be left outstanding.
So, Mr. Chairman, for the record, the waivers requested as listed on page 1 of the definitive plan is submitted. On record, we will change the 12-foot request to 14 feet. And we will also request that there be added a number 8 on waivers requested, which would then be a waiver of section 13.3 of the rules and regulations as referenced in response number 4 relative to roadway geometry.
Right.
So that we would have a waiver relative to the explanation as given by Mr. Hammer as to how with the private street and the single parcel at the front, which is going to be further addressed by our acceptance of a restriction that they cannot build a driveway other than the access that's going to be given to that lot off of the private way that will be constructed.
As well as section 18.
Steve?
What's that?
How about the postal regulations and where they're gonna put that? Is that gonna factor into the roadway somewhere or somehow?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're gonna have to put it in, so I don't,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, I'm not afraid that they're not gonna put it in, they're gonna get there.
No, I understand that, but I just didn't know how it was gonna affect the access in and out of that roadway, which is so tight as it is. So, I mean,
Unless you're gonna advocate making the road any wider, I mean, they're gonna have to fit it in to what they're
maybe
building.
they should have done their due diligence and made an attempt to get a hold of the postmaster and find out where they want this thing, and we have it identified. So, but that's all. But-
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing a 13.3 in the subdivision rules and regulations.
It's the reference to the town engineers.
So the-
Kevin's 13, Kevin put 13.3, but I don't know.
13.3 of the rules and regulations concerning, excuse me, sorry.
The 8?
Is that the preference then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Fowler is going to withdraw the closing of the public hearing. We have a couple of these that are just going to have to be addressed then. So, I mean, you're free to push the issue, but I mean, I don't know how it's going to turn out.
So we appreciate the attention and.
So I think, just so we're clear, I guess we're going to want an answer to the postal, where that's going to go. The next time in, you'll have the roadway reflecting what we were going to do here in terms of width. What else were we looking at? Oh, we have to get clarification on this 13 point.
That's a DPW.
Whether we can even waive that or not. That was a question that just, we're not 100% sure we can.
I think he can clarify, I think he can clear that up with Mr. Hardeman. Get together with him on how
I think he's gonna be-
how he's calculating.
I can't
his-
talk about Mr., excuse me, Mr. Ragland.
Yeah, how you can calculate, how he's calculating the 60 degrees,
Yeah.
and he, or I should say 57, and you're getting 60. I think that could be ironed out, and just some dialogue back from Mr. Hardeman on that.
Well, I think it's still a question, though, if we can't waive it, how is it addressed? I mean, if he says, I'm fine with it, I guess that's, if we can't waive it, then I guess that's gonna have to be sufficient, is that he's okay with the setup as it is. But if he's not, we still need an answer as to whether or not we can or cannot accept it the way it is. Okay. So we're gonna have to work on getting an answer for that.
And Mr. Johnson, we'll make sure we have a clear list of, we'll just make sure we have a clear list of all the items listed in one document, because we have some on a plan, now we have some on a comments
Well, I think that
letter.
would be ideal, because that was what we were just gonna have to do before we closed it, because that's one of the other things they've asked us, to have those sorted out both with you and on our own behalf before we close the hearing, and then start rifling through requirements that maybe you don't agree with. We wanna make sure everybody's on the same page with the waivers as requested, that they appear the way they need to now. We're going to need,
There's a waiver.
With calculations, the waivers, the postal regulations.
There's a couple other things they're looking for waivers on that we
Yeah, right.
haven't discussed.
right, so, do you want to discuss those now?
I think they're requiring streetlights and requiring sidewalks under the waiver requests. Correct.
No, sir.
No, what?
No.
No side.
No, I'm saying, it's part of the waiver request, so I think we talked about
no room to
making sure
put
we're
it.
checking all those
100%,
boxes,
that's why I
so we're
spoke
not
up.
back here
Right.
at the 11th hour again.
Right, and one of those additional items is, you know how when we come out, you don't have, you can't control the right-of-way rounding, the radius rounding on the abutting property, but we're not building a town road on this, so we can provide all the, one of the requirements is that you have a rounding here and a rounding here.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's for, a road.
Absolutely.
And that's a common waiver that we request because we're not building a full road here. This is a common driveway, so we can provide all the necessary means to construct the driveway and all the infrastructure without the need of that right-of-way rounding, which is a common.
So I'm sorry, did you have something on those two?
No, I just wanted to make sure, like we've talked about before, making sure we're checking all those boxes so it doesn't come back later that we didn't.
Mr. Fowle?
One question I have is, one of the waivers was for streetlights. Well, I can understand that, but as Mr. Plunkett realizes and knows from past history, we would put a pole lamp at the end of the driveway. I'm just wondering, are you going to put a pole lamp outside on the driveway
Yeah,
at the house?
sure. We'll put one on each.
Well, two of them are going to be side by each.
Well, we just put one.
So, I mean, if you could
Yeah, we'll add
use
that.
your ruler and push one down to the corner, and then one, see the radius for the turnaround?
Put it right here.
Yes. Yep, that's one.
Yep.
Tuck it to the
And the other one on the
opposite side.
opposite side of the radius.
Over in here?
Well, I don't know if you have on that plan. Yes, you do. You've got the taking for the cul-de-sac. Going right through the driveway. So where it cuts through the driveway.
You're existing on your radius you're showing here, so.
It's the right-of-way, yeah.
If you basically opposite.
They're not come out to put anything here, but put
No,
one here.
That
This
whole
side.
roadway.
Yep.
And then, I mean, so.
I would say right here. And right there.
But it's not a road.
Sure. That works.
It's a driveway.
I mean,
That's down.
and they're both off of each other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know what?
Just don't have your snow plow guy.
We actually have a utility pole.
Okay,
So we could put something off of that utility pole,
okay, fine.
right? And then we'll
I would
put something
prefer
maybe
lights
like
on
right
it.
in here, I'm thinking.
Okay. Okay.
It meets the requirement.
That's a good place for it because that's where the cars are gonna go mingle.
But then, the question was just on the sidewalks, then are we doing a fee in, I mean,
Both the driveway, so.
right, but the original requirement would have required sidewalks, that's why they need the waiver. So, I mean, I think in the past, what we've done is we've usually sort of split, because it would normally have required sidewalks on both. It's silly to try and get to make them pay for both sides worth of sidewalk. For
Not enough.
sidewalks to
He
nowhere.
doesn't have, even, you wouldn't be able to get it here, so.
Right. So, I mean, what I'm saying is, we might as well discuss now what we're willing to do, rather than leave it to the next time.
I mean, generally with the private ways, one of the issues relative to the benefit to the town is that, the homeowners association is responsible for the maintenance, upkeep of the roadway. So in that sense, it's not a situation where, the town isn't getting, a benefit out of this private road concept. They are getting a benefit in terms of the fact that it's not going to be maintenance, upkeep, and plowing, which I'm sure is a significant.
What was the one you were comparing this to?
East Street?
What'd we do there?
I just said I'd have to go back and look and see.
All right, so
I can't
There's
remember.
no,
we're gonna have to go, we'll pull up what we did on East Street and use that as a guide, maybe.
To stay consistent.
Just, yeah, again, for consistency's
Yep.
sake. If it turns out that we said nothing because of what you just said, which is the trade-off and benefit was fine, that's fine. But I do want to try and stay consistent, and honestly, I don't recall what we did. I mean, usually on the other ones, they become public ways, but we waive half the sidewalk because it doesn't make sense, or both, but they end up as public ways. Those ones I can keep in my mind, but this,
I believe on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we did the similar project up on Astor Street.
Astor would be the other
But
one.
we did require sidewalks on half of the side, one side of the street, and took the fee in lieu of for the other side.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's to be consistent. That was done up there, so we have to be consistent here. But I'd like to make a motion just to extend this, continue this public hearing until our next meeting and then move on, so. but-
All right, but I want to sort this out before we move on, though. Make
Okay.
sure we're doing, because I don't want to come back in the middle of July
Yeah.
and have stuff not ready to be done. So,
Before we continue it, I want to be straight on this sidewalk issue, because realistically, is there room to put sidewalk on one side?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which side would be the stone wall?
Along this side?
and that still fits even with this, the
No, I
street?
got a,
I thought you said.
I'm confused because I thought there was a concern of the slope there.
well, there's a retaining, I'm sorry, in this section here, there's a retaining wall here. So right there, that would be a problem, but in this section, there is enough room.
But if it's a private way, you don't want a public sidewalk that the town is then not gonna plow or maintain the roadway, but they're gonna have to come in and
We did it on
maintain, take care of
Astor
the,
Street. We required on the right side of that parcel out to the end on that.
Right, but I don't know that that was actually consistent with what we normally do either. I think, and again, it's not gonna help you, but I think part of the reason was, if I remember, Mr. Fattalia did mention, that was the length of the driveway was the reason. But in this case, you're not gonna get a full sidewalk anyways.
No.
So, I don't know, I'll make this proposal anyways, and everybody can decide what they want. Obviously, we're not gonna ask for sidewalks here. I just don't see any sense in creating a sidewalk, especially when it's only gonna go the length of a portion, and isn't gonna get you to the end anyways. But if we're going to do a fee in lieu of, if we end up in that place, I'd be talking about then that section where it could actually exist, which would be past the the house up front, going towards the new houses, just that section would be the width, the distance we're talking about, if we decide to do that.
That value between.
Would be the value of that piece, if we do that. All I'm saying is, I don't know yet if we're gonna do that, but I'm saying is, if we do, have it in your mind that
Yeah.
that's the number of the space and whatever that number works out to be, if we get there.
I just bring up the inconsistency of a private way and the public sidewalk.
But
and the cost and
but we have had that inconsistent, in that we definitely did it on Astor Street, I know that for sure. We had them do it, it's the same thing, it's a
With the
private,
private homeowners
it's a private,
association.
right, it's a private road. It's not a public road that we did for Astor Street. It would be same as this, and
How many
part of it was
houses?
that distance. Well, again, we can argue about what makes the
No, I was just trying to
consistency.
get- yeah.
It's more than this.
Yeah.
But not much. It was like 4, right? Yeah, so it's
4.
1 more than what you have here.
Because they had an existing home.
They had an existing
It
home
was-
as well.
It was the length of, if I recall, it was the length of the driveway, which made us say.
And it fit, that was the other thing, you could actually put one in all the way down. So, again, that's my suggestion, the rest of the board is, well, but if we end up in that, making that decision, and we'll pull our other decisions to find out what we've done. Astor was one that I'd say we definitely did do it. I don't know what we did
I believe
on the other.
East Street, you didn't.
On which one?
East Street.
We may not have. but again, it's gonna come down to, what I'm saying is, if we end up saying that we're asking, it's gonna be, or I'm suggesting it's only the length of where it would actually fit, not the whole length of the driveway, because obviously you couldn't even construct it in that first section.
No.
So it would be past the first house, going back towards where the, you know, the T-turn is.
Roughly talking 300 feet. About 300 feet. That's the only portion that would.
If we make that
Go up,
decision,
yes.
but that's what would be, that would be the only section.
Mr. Chairman, I have a little comment here. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Lane.
If you're making, they gave us 2 feet more for the road. If you can put a sidewalk in there, why can't we get 6 feet more on the road? Then people can walk in, you can have 2 cars going up and down.
But we're defeating the whole
Yeah, but I mean,
purpose of the
it's supposed to be a
concept.
driveway and not a road. That's a whole, like, I mean, that's sort of the trade-off.
No, but the thing is, we made a thing about 2 feet. They're gonna give us 2 foot more roadway. Now they can give us 4 feet wide sidewalks? Why can't we have more road?
Because the idea is you don't want more pavement. Like that's sort of what the argument
Yeah,
is.
but if
You're
you
trying
put the
not to.
sidewalk in, you're gonna put more pavement.
But we're not gonna ask them to put the sidewalk in, that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't want a sidewalk. We're only talking about whether or not we're gonna require a waiver for it. Not a waiver, I mean, say a fee in lieu of. Unless somebody here is arguing actually putting in a sidewalk. Because the only place they're gonna be able to put it is a portion of that driveway. It's gonna go to nowhere.
Mr. Chairman,
I understand, but you're talking about Astor Street. We refused the fee in lieu of at Astor Street, and that was the one place that we should have gotten a fee of lieu of.
Well, I wouldn't disagree, but what I'm saying is they could actually construct the entire sidewalk, though. You could get from the houses to the street. You can't do that here.
I don't know.
Mr. Fowle? I'm sorry, Mr.
Just one comment is, and I see the scenario of somebody coming out of one of those larger homes that's being built at the end of the driveway, with a parent walking to the school with their child, all right, and not even be able to walking down the sidewalk, because there's no sidewalk, in a 14-foot maximum width road. You know, with a baby carriage or a kid in hand, and the car's coming by. I mean, the roadway is so narrow that I don't see why we
It's not
can't
a
put.
road, it's a driveway.
Well, whatever it is, Stephen, it's the access in and out of that.
Well, how many driveways do you know are 24 feet across?
It's 12 feet, isn't it?
No, I know, but what you're saying is, you're talking about making it a road. The whole idea is it's not a road. We
I don't
want
want
it
to put a
not
road,
to
I
be a
want to make it,
road.
I want to make a sidewalk. So, but,
All right, I'll disagree. I do not want a sidewalk here. The rest of the board members can make their own decision, but I think it is, this is, again, sidewalks to nowhere. This makes, it literally can't go from one end to the other. It can't get by the front piece of the front property. You can't get to the street. So the sidewalk will literally be created to go nowhere. I can't endorse that. That makes no sense to me.
Two houses using the driveway.
Right, we're not, again, this isn't Main Street. This is literally meant to be a driveway.
It'd be no different from a.
I mean, you could have
going
one
on
house
their-
here
their driveway in
instead of the
their-
two, and the driveway's gonna be just as long, and we're not gonna do a thing about it. That same person's gonna walk out of their house and walk that same distance we were just talking about. Or even further, if you keep the existing house, it's actually further away. Like, I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic here. Like, I personally don't understand why we put it in National Street. I'll be honest. I didn't want to put it there. We did it. That's fine. And if the majority of the board wants to do something, that's fine. I'm simply saying I'm not in favor of putting a sidewalk in on this.
I believe he proposed the sidewalk on Assel Street. I believe in his initial plans on Assel Street, he had sidewalks on both sides, and because we moved it, we only required one because of the slope around the existing parcel.
Right.
So we
But I'm saying,
eliminated
he could have
one.
done, we could have just taken the fee, but we wanted the sidewalk. That's fine. I don't agree with that, but we did it, that's fine. We have to make a decision here. First decision is, are you gonna require a sidewalk? I'm suggesting that we should not ask for a sidewalk here. That's the first thing. I don't know what everybody else feels, but I don't think a sidewalk here makes sense. The next question then becomes, are we asking for a fee in lieu of some amount of sidewalk?
Having seen parents driving their children to school or driving them down their driveway or street to the end and waiting for the school bus. I think that's the norm today. But I would add something here, because there could be a family in one of these 3 houses that has, the children have to walk down. One is only 25 feet, the other is 350 feet. Someplace to stand that is not in the road. And I don't mean a sidewalk, but a pad. We put them in certain areas. Mr. Plunkett probably realized Ginsburg Drive off of Rogers Street. There's a pad that was put there for the children that walked all the way back, from the extension of that road, and they were able to stand off the street, waiting for the bus.
Could you do, if you're gonna do that, though, I think the only place you can do it, if you can do it, is to the right side coming out.
You want to be able to do
Because,
it.
well, the other thing too is the left side's the other house's property, that's the other thing. So it really have to be, can you put a small pad in to the right at the end? If, because you could theoretically have, 3 or 4 kids on that street, all waiting for a school bus that's probably stopping right there at the end of the street. Because you are gonna have houses.
Mr. Gorman would like to say something.
Mr. Chairman, Frank Gorman, Southern End Realty.
Yep.
It's kind of ironic because I listened to the very first presentation about the sidewalks in the town. And when I served as a selectman in Dracut, we did this 20 years ago. And we had the same presentation. And the issue came up, is it prevailing wages? I can build it for $25 a foot. The town has to do it for $75 a foot.
Right.
Dracut came up with a fund, like you're talking about, and it makes all the sense in the world. And we've donated to these funds in communities. And if it would help the board from now till the next meeting, using what the average rate for a builder would be, which is about $28, we're right on the money there, let's say $30 to round it off, we would contribute to the fund the area that could be sidewalked, which is about 315 feet, I think. I just kind of calculated it. And we'd be more than happy to make a contribution to the fund that you're proposing to have or you already have.
All right, so that, I mean, as far as that would solve the problem, because that was gonna be the outstanding issue to figure out between now and then.
It can be part of the conditions, we're fine with that.
So let me just run through. Mr. Ryder?
I think, after Mr. Hardeman's presentation, I think it makes sense, based upon, it's a driveway. We understand it is a driveway. I think it's money better served using another.
And I've seen that fund all over Dracut. When it was needed at the right place and the right time, they tied the schools together. I remember they did that on Methuen Street. So.
Mr. Fowler? Is that
All set.
satisfactory?
I'm in agreement with that.
Mr. Delaney?
Oh, no, I'm in agreement with whatever way we go. It's just that Astor Street was different than this.
Right, no, I'm saying, but are you okay with that?
It's a lot different, because we said right off the bat, in the very beginning of our meeting with Astor Street, we will not accept the fee in lieu of.
Wait, but I'm saying, with that suggestion, are you okay with his suggestion here?
Sure.
Okay.
Was it still acceptable?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Suggestion before.
All right, I'd be all right with that as well,
And
so.
can we put the pad at the end?
Oh, yeah, can you look at that, please?
Excuse me?
We've done it with a lot of the other developments too, like, is down at the far end, at the street end. It would probably only be able to fit on the side
Sure.
to the top.
Yeah, we could put a little,
Small, like, if the kids do have to wait for the bus, that way they're
Yeah.
not standing in the driveway trying to do so.
absolutely.
Just gives them a safer place to be. I mean, April's Way did it.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of them, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's simple, but just.
Yeah, we would want to do that.
Astor Street has it as well. So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else outstanding?
I
Check
just,
off now?
no, I think we,
Well, you got the mail and
The mail thing's the other
Mail.
thing. That's one of the answers you need for next time. Sure. Where that's going.
I just would like, he did talk about putting a barrier of some sort, would like that in that, about the white pines or what you determine. Just to have that in the minutes.
Right,
that
yep.
We note that, please. Thank you. No, no problem. That way, just,
Where's the snow gonna go?
What's that?
Where's the snow gonna go now, if you have a sidewalk?
No sidewalk.
No sidewalk.
No sidewalk.
We're taking
We're taking money.
take the, right. So same as before.
Taking the $9,850 and giving it to Mr. Hardeman.
Okay. All right. Does that sound, you guys sound, everything sound all right? Yes. All right, so with that, I like, we still have Mr. Fatalia's request to continue this to the 8th at
July.
7:25.
Sure.
Okay.
Motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
No,
78, I thought you gave it.
Oh, 7.
725.
Yeah, I'm gonna do all three of those now. All right, so moving on to agenda item E, which is 91 Northgate Road. We have
Want to see the meetings? You want to see the minutes?
we have a request to continue. All right, so 91 will go to, where did my sheet go? This one, right? So 7:30, okay. So I have a motion to continue 91 Northgate to 7:30 on July 8th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item F, which is 2131 Main Street. We also have a request to continue this. This is already penciled in for 7:15 on the 8th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That leaves us with 1037 North Street et al. Also requesting to be continued to the 8th. That one is 7:20. Do I have a motion? I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries. That leads us to old business. Do we have any old business to discuss?
I have something.
Mr. Delaney.
I don't know if it's old business or new business, but our friend at 28 Main Street, okay? There was a commercial area, and then there was 7 or 8 condos built down in the back of it.
Yeah.
Okay, and we told somebody that the landscaping had to be fixed on the line. Now, he has gone to the landscaper of the commercial part of the project, and that landscaper says he has nothing to do with it. He goes down the back where there's a different landscaper where there's 7 or 8 condos, and that guy says he's not responsible for it.
But they can be invited here.
Okay, so the thing is, this guy that owns the house is saying, well, everybody says they're supposed to fix it, but nobody's fixing it. They got dead trees, the bamboo was growing up, and so forth and so on. So the thing is, this has come to us before. It's been in front of us. We thought we had it straightened out, but obviously it's not. So I think we should take a deeper look into this and get somebody to fix it. I mean, there's dead trees there, there's trees that are dying, and plus in the back of them, there's bamboo and shit growing all over the place.
So we're talking about the dentist on the
The
front,
dentist
and
in the house.
Homeowners Association in the back, or the developer.
Yeah, well, no, but there's a guy that owns a house. Then there's the driveway for the commercial space and the driveway to go down to the condos.
Right. No,
And
exactly.
he can't get anybody to fix it. And we have stated we wanted it fixed, and I thought it was straightened out.
Mr. Chairman, I can certainly look into that and follow up with the
Let's
board.
just figure out which of the 2 pieces that section belongs to and get whoever that is in here.
Okay.
Because someone's gonna deal with it. I don't remember from the plans which piece is which, like where it breaks off from.
Steve, we worked on that, and we were told that that was gonna be fixed.
No, I recall.
And now nobody has done a thing.
Yeah.
And
And I
this
don't
gentleman
remember,
here called me, and I figured it's the right thing to do.
I don't recall which we left it off with, who it belongs to. But obviously it belongs to one of the 2, so.
The-
Yeah,
Both
the
saying
address
they're
is-
not gonna fix it, that's what happens.
And the address is 1428 Main Street,
Okay.
and then the commercial space is 1438 to 1470
Okay,
Main Street.
thank you.
And then you'll see when you go in that driveway, you'll see the condos down in the back.
Okay. Yep, I'll look into it and follow up with the board
I
at
would
the next
appreciate
meeting.
it.
Yep.
All right. Any other old business? Any new business? All right, we got correspondence, anything in here particularly you wanted to highlight?
No.
All right, so everybody has their correspondence. Anyone with any comments on the correspondence? Nope. Town planners report?
No, I don't have any particular comments on that.
All right, with that, take a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Good evening.